Happy Monday, degenerates. Welcome on back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. It is a pay-per-view fight week. We are getting titles on the line. UFC 312. I am very, very excited about this card, you guys. I know I say that every single week, but this particular card, first and foremost, you guys know, of my, top 3 to 5 fighters, right? Umar, which, unfortunately didn't go our way last week. Dricus du Plessis has really been the other guy. So my boy is in the main event this week, and I'm ready to talk about this card underneath him. A lot of people, a lot of mutterings and murmurings, and people are not happy with this card. And I get it. You look at UFC 312 on paper, and I completely understand. However, I'm here to tell you that as the guy who dug in deep, who did the tape, who did the pre-work, I think this card's going to be a banger, you guys. It's one of those ones where it's top-heavy. It is absolutely top-heavy. Don't get me wrong. You're paying for the main and the co-main event at UFC 312, and that never feels good when you're trying to, shell out of your pocket to get this thing, or you're clicking the streaming sleeve. No judgment here, whichever one you're doing. But it is tough to sell. But when you look at the way these fights match up on the undercard, I think this one's going to be fun, you guys. I really do. Let's welcome in the chat. How's everybody doing? My guy, Mushroom MMA, what's going on? Dream in the house. George Ray, Pro Tony, we got Chris Thompson, Kate Garrison, Litz in the house. Marab's Disciple, what is going on? Welcome back. Appreciate you guys all being here. My boy Dick's Insider in the house. Andrew Nance, Louis Mack Jr., a Gross Infection. I haven't seen that name in a little bit. What's up? Welcome back, Gross. We've got Air Dog, Eric Betts Fights, Nigel Lee. And let's see here, Playing for Real in the house. What's going on, everybody? We already have 100 of you rocking with us here on this Monday evening. As you guys know, we need to let the algorithm know where we are. We need to collect all the diehards that we may have previously lost. Hit that like button for me. Share this bad boy out on social media. I don't care if Facebook is the only thing you use. Share your grandma the Die Hard MMA podcast. Let her know, get her ass in here. Wrinkly old butt like mine. Let's go. Come on. All right, guys, real quick. Short recap. I do apologize. I feel really bad. I never even got around to recapping UFC 311. I told you guys I was going to try to do that. But with MMA, the content grind is so much. Like, it just never stops. I never had a free moment to go back and talk about that one. I do apologize. I already confessed to having gotten my ass kicked on that card. I feel bad because I actually have a lot to say about it, and we just don't have the time to go back and go over it. But this past weekend, Adesanya versus Imavov, I got toasted again, you guys, and that shouldn't be news to anybody. I've been getting my ass kicked for about a calendar year straight at this point. I just cannot seem to get on track. Started off really nicely with the Grad and Lucas Aleksandre under 2.5 bet, which the violence bets just seem to be the way to go. I didn't bet Hamdi Abdelwahab, but I called the robbery split decision, did I not? If you guys listened to last week's show, I told you guys he was going to rob that man blind if he had the chance again. So didn't bet on Hamdi, would have been a bad bet, but got the dub anyway, just the way the judges go, right? Somehow I talked myself into betting on Mayra Bueno Silva yet again. And this one hurt specifically because she got exactly the opportunity that I was looking for. She had Jasmine Jasudavicius in just the deepest guillotine. And I got to tell you guys, that's one of those spots where if you tell me Mayra sinks in a choke, you're like, she sinks in a choke, 50-50, minus 110s on both sides. Are you betting her to go ahead and finish that choke? Yes. Mayra Bueno Silva, if she gets a submission locked in, she almost never lets go of the damn thing. So I have nothing but respect and props to give for Jasmine Jasudavicius. But that one hurt for the bankroll because I really thought Mayra had her in that sub. Muhammad Naimov and Shamil Gadziev would have been just the easiest two-leg parlay of all time. And I almost made it, but it was too chalky by the time I decided to maybe entertain that idea, so I ended up passing on it. Layups would have been easy cash. Of course, I missed the boat. I need to talk about Mike Davis for a second, you guys. I need to talk about Mike Davis. A lot of people were like really getting on me about the Mike Davis play. And I got to tell you guys, that was not the man I bet on. Okay, if you go back and you watch any fight Mike Davis has ever been in, you run that tape, he is a completely different fighter, a completely different human being than the one that showed up on Saturday. So I'm going to leave it to you guys to decide bad bet or not on that one, because I feel the process was correct. I bought low on the market. I had a good idea of what my fighter is capable of, and I decided to buy when the price was at its low point. That's generally speaking a good strategy. He just didn't even come out the gates. If you guys follow me on social media, he jumped guard in the first 3 seconds of the fight, and I immediately posted an L. Like, I update my card throughout the night. I immediately update, the wins and losses as the fights are going on. And as soon as he jumped guard, I said, that's it. I don't need to see another second of this fight. And I marked that a loss, which maybe a little bit of the reverse jinx in there. I was trying everything I could to help out my boy and turn the tides there a little bit. But it turned out to be true, because you can't come out against Faraz Ziam and play guard instead of getting on top. The most infuriating part of it is he actually had Faraz Ziam in like a knee lock where their legs got all twisted up. And that calf slicer explodes the knee of 90% of this roster. I don't know how Ziam didn't tap to that. I don't know how he didn't find his way to like a ground and pound TKO. We've seen Roman Dolidze from that position be able to just unload on ground and pound. And then even in round 3, when Mike Davis finally said, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't pull guard. Maybe I should wrestle. He got on top of Faraz Ziam and immediately opened up a massive cut on the dude and had him in trouble off of his back. That it's like, bro, why didn't you just do that from the start? Why didn't you just start the fight beating this man's face in instead of pulling guard? So it just massively, as you guys can tell, very, very frustrating, especially considering the losing skid that I have been on for quite some time. So frustrating for this kind of a situation to happen to me, because the skill set was there. And I've told you guys before, I can tell you where the advantages are, but when it comes to this gambling bullcrap, you can't get in the cage for them. I would bet Mike Davis again. If this thing was stateside, if he even posted on social media afterward that he had a bad week overseas. What that means exactly, I don't know. But he said that he wasn't himself in the cage because of the rough time he had, and he's never fighting overseas like that again. I'll bet you if they rebook that here in the States, he wins that fight, and I would make that bet again. It sucks. And then Imavov nuking Israel Adesanya. I don't even know what to say about this. Like, Adesanya tries to mimic Alex Pereira yet again, the whole eye poke situation, and not taking the time to recover, waving the ref back in instead of just taking the time he needs. He looked fine before that. He was doing very well in the exchanges before that. And then because he rushes the fight back to start, Imavov just nukes him. Like, what? So, I mean, that one on paper looks like a bad bet. You know what I mean? Anybody on Nasruddin Imavov was looking like they're on the right side the way that one finished. But it's one of those weird situations where you're like, I wish I could have seen the fight play out normally. Like, I wish Israel had taken 2 minutes, blotted his eye out, and reset at space and distance. And does that ever even happen? Like, does Imavov get the opportunity to crack him like that if Israel doesn't try to be Alex Pereira again? But I don't know. I'm upset. I'm frustrated. We need to move on because we have a big guest and a big card, but I'm pissed off and I'm ready to finally stack a couple of chips. You guys know the blue, baby blue diehard stimulus check shirt. It's damn near retired at this point. I don't wear it often enough. The moths are chewing holes in it. I'm going to have to set a release for my retro shirts for people to buy if they want one of those, because we just don't see it often enough anymore. We got to turn this shit around. And to help us in that goal is none other than your favorite and my favorite, Aaron Bronstetter, coming to us. What's going on, man? How you doing today?
Let's go. Reporting for duty. I mean, with all of the stuff that's going on in the world of mixed martial arts, this is the kind of show I prefer to be on, because we just get to talk about the fights. Like, that's why I always relish the opportunity to join you and a lot of the other I guess, betting shows in the space, because we get to just talk brass tacks. We don't need to talk about all of the, controversies outside of the cage. Let's break down these fights. Let's have some fun. And this is kind of a scary card because pay-per-view cards typically favorites win more often than not. And there are so many underdogs I like on this card, which is never a good sign. But that being said, there's like so few ranked fighters on this card that it almost feels like it's like a fight night matchups. So you almost have to like abandon that like typical pay-per-view favorites winning formula and look at it that way when there's fights that are two unranked fighters. I could end up being dead wrong on that, and the favorites could just all come through. But let's talk about it, because I think that we'll have to see whether or not you and I are in agreement on some of these underdogs.
Yeah, Aaron, I completely agree with your assessment, though, man. For my money's worth, last week was the pay-per-view. You know what I mean? Over in Saudi Arabia, they had it stacked up. We've got those minus 275 and minus 350 favorites all up and down the card. This one seems like this is an advertisement, Aaron. Like they're selling you Dricus and Sean Strickland too. They're selling you a Weili Zhang title fight, but then below that, you've got half the card making their UFC debut off Dana White's Contender Series. This is not your average pay-per-view card. They're introducing us to a lot of these fighters on this undercard. And because of that, I think you're right. The numbers are potentially going to be very different from your normal pay-per-view card where you're getting lots of top 15 talents going at it with one another. This is a very, very low level card. And I do think there's some juicy opportunities on it. Everybody do me a favor and hit the like button, like my man Dan Levy from Half the Battle says, and buckle in, because as Aaron said, this is the Die Hard MMA podcast. This is our place of escape. We're not going to talk about the drama here. We're not going to talk about the ins and outs, although I probably should start a show talking about that kind of stuff, but not here. Here we're going to talk about the fights. We're going to focus on the matchups and the gamble, and I hope you all have a great evening doing that with us. First fight of the evening, we are kicking things off with Hyun Park, and he is taking on Nyamjargal Tumendemberel. Good luck, you guys, trying to pronounce that one, because Tumendemberel is a fighter who has 6 names all combined into one there. Not easy to say, but with his UFC debut, thank goodness they said it enough times. I think I'm close, at least. Aaron, last time I broke his fight down, I basically just mumbled. It was I kind of went humble, and that was it. So at least we have kind of an idea now. He is 0-1 inside the UFC, 8-1 overall. His UFC debut was a split decision loss to Carlos Hernandez. And that fight really frustrated me, Aaron, because I wanted to bet, I said this on the podcast, I really wanted to back Carlos Hernandez as like a plus 250 underdog. But when that line dropped, I wasn't the only one waiting for it. So it got smoked. And we got down to the point where Carlos Hernandez was the small favorite, or it was close to a pick'em. And so at that point, I was like, well, Carlos Hernandez is the guy that the UFC has circled as he will lose to our Asian prospects. Like that's all he really is at this point. They keep on firing Asian prospects at the poor guy. And even though he puts up a fight, he doesn't end up getting his hand raised. So I ended up going ahead and taking the bait. And similar to the Mike Davis situation, I bought as low as humanly possible on Tumendemberel. And it was a close fight. It was a split decision. And I thought they were going to rob Carlos Hernandez and everybody else who had the gambling closing line value trophies. I thought they were going to rob them all blind and I'd get my hand raised. But nope, right guy won. Carlos Hernandez got it. And we kind of got to see what Tumendemberel is all about. He's very, very unrefined at this point. He kind of reminds me of like a Mongolian Terrence McKinney. Like he just wants to go out there and chuck bombs. His ground game is not what it needs to be. His wrestling defense is not what it needs to be. He is crazy aggressive, throws himself off balance, overthrowing, looking for the kill with every single shot. Now, if he does get you wounded, he's got that killer instinct. This guy shakes the floor with his ground and pound when he gets on top of people. I kind of talked about this, one of his regional scene fights. He throws just this massive punch from mount, and his opponent is able to squirm just out of the way. And the thud from his fist hitting the floor, I thought he broke his hand. Like he is not a guy that holds back whatsoever. Tumendemberel will enjoy a 5-inch reach advantage here, and he's taking on Hyun Park, who is 2-0 off of road to UFC, 29 years old, undefeated, 9-0 overall. And Aaron, my whole thing right now is fade the crap out of these road to UFC guys, because they are not ready. But the UFC is matching 2 of them up here, so I'm not sure what to do with that. Hyun Park is coming off a big KO win over Shannon Ross, who was, been released at this point probably. He was the chinniest fighter on the UFC roster. I actually have made the mistake of betting Shannon Ross a couple of times because he's actually got a decent skill set. He just cannot take a punch, and they used that to great effectiveness with Park, who is also a very, very aggressive finisher. This guy likes to chop away with leg kicks. He stays very heavy on his feet. He steps hard into the pocket and looks to trade power punches. He actually does have some decent grappling to his name, although he doesn't usually tend to use it. He got tagged up a couple of times against Shannon Ross in their battle before he finally landed on the button. Lost position scrambling, getting over aggressive, trying to get up on top and take the back. And Shannon Ross actually looked like he was in that fight until he got landed on the button. I think Park's defense is very, very, very questionable here. He's a minus 225 favorite, Aaron. The plus 185 coming back on Tumendemberel. And man, I like violence in this fight. I don't even want to pick a side, Aaron. Like, once the totals come out and I get an option to look at an under in this spot, that's where my money's going to be, because I think these guys are just built for kind of like the Dana White's Contender Series. They're going to come out, they're going to put on the show, they're both going to try and kill each other. Somebody is going to get knocked out. And I kind of feel like it's dog or pass, because I am never trusting a road to UFC fighter at minus 225 ever again. So believe it or not, I'll just say it. I'm going to pick Tumendemberel to go ahead and land a nuclear right hand at some point in this fight and end it.
Yeah, I mean, this one is just the epitome of a pass. It's like, let's gather information and perhaps utilize that down the road. Yeah. But I mean, the thing that kind of scares me if you're on the Park side is like Tumendemberel is 26, and he's a guy that, like you said, has good intangibles. He's long. He seems to be improving, in every fight. But at the same time, like I've liked what I've seen from Park, and I think that Park is just a much more refined fighter at this point in time. So I would have to lean Park, but like again, it's with Tumendemberel being 26, like you just don't know how many gains he's making in each camp, and eventually it's either gonna like catch up and he'll be a UFC caliber guy, or he'll like lose this fight, lose one more, and we won't ever hear from him again. It's one of those situations, right? So like I think if I'm not mistaken, Tumendemberel was at Team Alpha Male last time, but I might be wrong on that. I feel like he's training at a good camp now. It might have been actually with Eddie Shaw. I can't remember. But I feel like last time out we saw him with a good coach, and he's been going, like, he's training stateside. But again, I could be wrong on that. That said, I'm going to go on the Park side. I think that Park is just a better all around fighter right now, and has him beaten basically every area, and that's why I think the line is what it is. And I'm not sure if I agree with the fight going under either. Like I think that both these guys have shown good durability thus far in their careers, and it could end up being something of a chess match. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one goes the distance. And that's why this is kind of a pass, right? Like we're all over the place on this one, and that's just never a good sign.
Yeah. And I always try to remind you guys, I always try to tell you guys, the bookmakers are, they must set a line for us. It doesn't mean we actually have to bet anything on it. So I'm with you, Aaron. This is probably a fight that you should be passing on and just not getting involved from a gambling perspective. It should be plenty fun. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be having my money anywhere near this fight. I think the underdog is potentially live. I think he's got, like you said, kind of a higher ceiling. He'll be able to round out his skill set if he gets to the right location in camp. I feel like you might be right. I'm going to have to check in with my guy, Brandon Olivas, and see if maybe he's spending a little bit of time. I feel like he might have been with Fight Ready or something like that. He's not posting a whole lot on social media. Now, obviously, he's over in Sydney. So even my stalking skills, I can't really have any idea of what he did between the last fight and this one. But you guys know how I feel about Fight Ready. If he's been hanging out at Fight Ready and they've been working on his wrestling, which was a big sore spot in his last fight, that's the kind of place where a guy like this, I think, potentially could thrive and make some improvements.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's kind of a wait and see situation. I was just actually looking at Eddie Chuz's social media to see if he is like in like Sydney, but it doesn't seem like it. So I guess, again, total wait and see fight for me.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a pretty quick turnaround from his last fight to this one. So with him being that active, even if he were at a good gym, I wouldn't expect massive improvements from him in that short amount of time. He's just staying busy on this one. And that always worries me, because he's probably going to look like the same guy we saw last time, which means he could probably get taken down. And then we won't have to, that'll end that debate right there. If Park comes with the right game plan, takes him down, then this fight is probably pretty close to over from the jump.
Yeah, but that being said, I think Tumendemberel's submission game has looked pretty good as well. So again, I think there's going to be an interesting tactical fight, but I just think Park is kind of a step ahead of him.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Let's get into the next fight. We have got Quillan Salkild. That is a very hard name to say, you guys. And he's
Quillan
taking on.
Salkild.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. You're much more practiced at that one than I am. It's funny because when you read them in your head, you think you've got it. And if you haven't said it out loud enough times, your tongue will still get hooked there.
Yeah. And with the last guy, it's Tumendemberel. Like the Mongolian fighters, the EL, it makes an E sound. It's like Dana Bakhtari. I learned that just from listening to John Anik. So I'm not like some sort of Mongolian historian or something along those lines. Although Mongolian historian is very fun to say. But we shall move on.
That would be good for your LinkedIn profile, Mongolian historian.
Mongolian historian, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to remember the Timberi. That's a good the good note there on the way that last name is pronounced there. But anyway, the other guy that is involved in this fight is the infamous Anshul Jubli. Jubli is 1-1 in the UFC, 7-1 overall. And let's talk about that massive L he took against Mike Breedeen. I know some very, very sharp people, shout out our guy, regular guest of the show, Lucrative MMA. He had the round 3 prop with Mike Breedeen and actually cashed huge on that fight. And it was pretty crazy going back to rewatch that one, Aaron, because Anshul Jubli really looked like he had that fight completely in hand. He had Mike Breedeen beaten absolutely everywhere, and he just got dogged. That was a situation where Mike refused to die. And then he starts coming forward and like damn near Hakkaiing in the cage, right? Like he's like sticking his tongue out and he's like making faces at him and he's telling him no, and he's screaming at him. And I really feel like Mike Breedeen just broke Anshul Jubli mentally in that fight because it was clear and obvious that Jubli was the better of the two fighters in the cage that night. He slowed down on gas a little bit, and then when this wild man just kept coming forward, slinging haymakers and screaming at him, something in him gave out. Now that's concerning. As a gambler, it is concerning because once you've got that quit in you, you always have to remember that is there, right? That is in the makeup of a person. So it's going to put any kind of doubt in my mind moving forward when it comes to betting on somebody like Anshul Jubli that potentially he can be broken in the cage. But when you look at his skill set, he has quick hands, man. He's got a really accurate right hand that he really likes. He works the body well with front kicks. He tries to maintain that range. He's long. He's very, very lengthy with his kicks. He actually has a really nasty ground game, and his ground and pound from top position is excellent. That's something we saw in his earlier UFC fight and his road to UFC travels. He backpedals a lot, which is something that, I know fighters can counter. You don't always have to be the aggressor, but it does seem like he's on the back foot maybe a little bit too often. And once Breedeen realized that he was desperate to keep that range where he needed it, that really kind of unlocked Breedeen's comeback there, as he didn't let him have the range that he wanted him. And if you stay where Anshul Jubli wants you to stay, he will piece you up. Now, I looked at some of the stats here. He went 0 of 5 for takedowns on Breedeen, and the grappling really is something that was his calling card, pre-UFC. So if he can get his grappling going, I think he's always got a path to victory. But when someone like Breedeen is keeping you to 0 of 5, big question surrounding your wrestling skill set. Stalking him on Instagram, he does look like he is in crazy good shape coming into this fight. Might have packed on a little bit of muscle, which I think probably will do him good. His opponent, Salkild, is a 25-year-old Aussie, and we are in his backyard, so he's going to be the hometown guy here on this one. He's making his UFC debut off of Dana White's Contender Series. I am extremely jealous of this man's mustache. It is glorious, and it's something I could never grow in my lifetime, so hats off to you, Quillan. That's a beautiful stash you're rocking there. This guy is a BJJ black belt. He was the eternal lightweight champion, and from what I understand, Aaron, he was actually supposed to be on the road to UFC, and something happened there that they decided at the last second not to put him onto the road to UFC. Now, I have 2 tinfoil cap theories about that, right? So he either was not good enough to be on road to UFC, and from what we've seen, that would be a bad thing. And he was more of a one-round action fighter, so he fights Contender Series better. That would make some sense to me. But the other theory is that he was too good for Road to UFC. And they didn't want this white kid stepping in here with their regional talent from Asia and just ragdolling everybody because they weren't ready for that level and he was better than everybody on the show. It will remain to be seen which one of those is accurate. But Salkild is another fighter who stays very, very long. He's got a very long, snappy jab. He's another one who likes to attack the body. He's got a great switch kick on him. He does reach a bit too far, in my opinion, on his takedown attempts where he doesn't fully set them up and he just kind of sticks his arms out and dives headlong trying to get you to the ground. He does a good job of making you work and making you grapple. Seems like he's got decent cardio. He likes to climb on people's back, and he's a big, long dude. He likes to try and hang on you and make you work. Very intelligent butterfly guard, which as a jiu-jitsu guy, that's always something beautiful to see when they've got good butterfly sweeps and things of that nature. He doesn't move his head, Aaron. That's something that's very concerning to me. He's got tall man's defense to the max. And I've seen him clipped with some big shots. I mean, it seems like he's pretty durable, but at the same time, his head and face is there for the taking. You've got Quillan, who's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage in this spot. And the line, Aaron, the betting line, my goodness. Quillan is a minus 550 favorite. Anshul Jubilee is a plus 410 underdog right now. I am this close to just throwing a blind dart on Anshul Jubilee. You guys know exactly how I feel about the Dana White's Contender Series fighters. They come in overhyped. They come in not quite ready. Now, obviously, the same is true, maybe to a higher degree, of these Road to UFC guys. But you've got Quillan, who has no UFC caliber competition at this point in his career, who I've seen get cracked in the head a couple times, who I've seen get out grappled and put on his back in bad situations a couple times. And then you've got Anshul Jubilee, who, as a big favorite in his last fight, let down a lot of people, busted a lot of parlays. He goes from being a minus 250, minus 275 favorite to a plus 400 underdog. And at a certain point, Aaron, the number matters. This is dog or pass as it gets for me, because there's no way I'm laying minus 550 on Quillan. I haven't seen a single thing on his tape that tells me he should be that big of a favorite. If you want to say he's the favorite and make him a minus 150, a minus 180 or something like that, that's fine. I completely understand. If you want to say he's going to win this fight, again, that's fine. I understand. But a 4-1 underdog for Anshul Jubilee just because he pissed off some people letting us down in his last fight. And mind you, this is a kid that we know the UFC wants to get behind. You know, India is a untapped market for them. They tried to put him in a position to win his last fight. And when Breedeen upset the apple cart, guess who got cut? Not Anshul Jubilee. Mike Breedeen is the one who got let go for messing everything up. They kept Anshul Jubilee around. I kind of think they've got plans for the kid. And I kind of think this is an opportunity where you just hold your breath, you cover your eyes, and you throw the plus 410 dart and see what happens. Aaron, talk me off a ledge. Am I doing this? What are we doing here on this fight? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not feeling it. I mean, they gave him the biggest layup on the roster, in my opinion, in Mike Breedon. And that's not no disrespect to Mike Breedon. I think Mike Breedon's a really tough guy. But I think that if you're trying to get somebody a win, I think that's the guy you want to put him against. And if you look at who Breedon's been put against, it's always guys they want to bounce back or put in a good spot. But, you know, Breedon was able to get him out. And I just think that when that happens, you kind of lose the brass. They probably look at Jubilee and say, well, I think it's time to, you know, cut bait. This isn't going to be a guy that we can rely on. But at the same time, I think that putting him against Salkild isn't necessarily like a death knell. Like you said, he's not a guy that has like a ton of experience. He's done really well on the Irish regional, the Australian regional scene rather, and won titles in good promotions. And I think he trains where Steve Ursig trains as well in Perth. And he's somebody that I think has a lot of upside. He just turned 25. I loved what I saw from him on the Contender Series. I think Salkild is the side. And I also think, like, when you see big underdogs like this that are whatever, like plus 400s, let's say, if you can get Salkild by sub, which is like the way that he wins most of his fights at like plus 250, against a guy that likes to wrestle in Jubilee or at least shoot takedowns, I feel like you're more likely to hit that at plus 250 if you want value than hit Jubilee straight up, even though you're getting a lot more outcomes on the Jubilee side because he can win by decision, whatever, submission, KO. I feel like Salkild is going to be such a step ahead that he's going to be able to do whatever he wants in this situation. unless we see like a real improvement from Jubilee. And like you said, Jubilee looked pretty good against Breeden early on in that fight, but eventually he just kind of wilted. And when you look at the kind of pressure that Salkhild put on his opponent on the Contender Series, even though he didn't get a finish, you kind of got a good sense of the kind of fighter he is. And I think that just even from a matchup standpoint, he's going to be a bad matchup for Jubilee. So I'm on the Salkhild side. I agree with him being just prohibitively expensive as a guy that doesn't have that much experience to pay minus 600 or whatever it is for him. But I think if you like an angle, whether it's sub or KO, I think the sub prop is probably the better value of them, given how much Jubilee shoots. That's probably the angle that I would take with it, is a Salkhild sub at plus 250.
Okay. Hey, I don't hate the read at all. And frankly, from what we saw with Mike Breedeen, I don't mind the round 2, round 3. You know, if you want to take a page out of the last fight's book, it's never as easy as we saw this last time, so it'll happen this time. But if it turns out that Jubilee is one of these guys that just can't carry his game and cardio deep into the fight, you can always just sprinkle the round 2 and round 3 finishes, and those numbers are pretty decent, especially for a guy who is a minus 600 favorite in this kind of a spot. So I think there's multiple ways where you can actually find some kind of value on this fight. I just kind of feel like the one performance from Jubilee isn't exactly who he is. We'll see. You know, we'll see what this kid looks like when he gets to the UFC, because you could be right. He could just be straight up better than Jubilee, as, you know, most of the fighters coming in are going to be better than most of these road to UFC guys as is anyway. Paul Ververet asking, is this one of the chosen people? No, Paul. No, he's not. I'm not planting my flag on Anshul Jubilee and being like, that's my guy. You watch. He's going to turn it around. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I think the UFC likes him. I think the UFC likes the market that he's in. They are going to try to push him. They did try to push him, but you know how the UFC is. They're fickle. When you drop the ball for them, when they try to set you up, they don't always treat you the best after that. Sometimes you get the hard road after that. So we'll see. I'm not sure. Like I said before, the tinfoil cap goes both ways on this one, Aaron. I'm not sure if this kid was too good or not good enough for road to UFC, and we won't know until that cage door closes. But it's just hard for me as a guy who tries to look for the value to see that kind of a swing from, hey, we should, you know, we like this guy as minus 300. Oh, now he's garbage. He's plus 400. The truth is somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? Like, he probably was overhyped that first time. He probably shouldn't have been that big of a favorite the first time. But I also don't think he should be this big of a dog this time. Does that mean he'll win? Not necessarily. It's a tough fight. It's a tough fight, a low-level fight with bad situations on all sides. What's going on, Miami Lawyer, joining us over from Twitch? Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you being here. Tony, oh, my Lord. Hate to hear that, man. Izzy let a lot of people down on
you got to hedge out of that. I mean, if you're on an 11-legger and you got an underdog that you got to hedge out of that.
You on an 11-legger, you got to. Yeah, I'm not the one. I mean,
Imavov was like plus 140 or plus 150 at go time. Like, come on. Yeah.
Man, it's funny because if it's a 2-legger, you know, if we're talking, you know, even money, plus 150, you don't hedge out of those. Like, those are like, you wouldn't have made the parlay if you didn't want that number, right? But when it's a 10 or an 11-leg parlay, you're talking a 20-1 type of cash out. Yeah, okay, he hedged. He said he did hedge.
Okay, good. All right, Tony.
Congratulations then, Tony. My guy VB MMA Picks in the house. What's up, buddy? Thanks for being here. All right, guys, let's keep it rolling. Next fight up, you've got Kevin Air Juice set, and he takes on Jonathan
Mikhailov.
Thank you. Another one. I forgot to pronounce that one out loud. Jonathan Mikhailov. Man, it's been a really interesting situation here for Kevin Juicette, Aaron. He's a guy that he came to the UFC. He's part of that vaunted City Kickboxing crew, and we are seeing the fall right now of City Kickboxing. And I kind of felt like he was the lesser of the City Kickboxing fighters. I was never all the way in on him, and a lot of people, I feel like, were really, really hyped on him when he first made it to the UFC. And I was a little bit more cautious. Now, he is 2-1, but when you go back and you look at the fights that he was in, Kiefer Crosby, Song Kenan, I mean, both almost kind of punching bags for him at that point. You know, not a true real test. And then he got smoked by Brian Battle. Absolutely smoked by Brian Battle. And when you watch that fight with Brian Battle, it's because Kevin Juicette feels like a clean fighter, right? He feels like somebody who needs to operate in the space and in the range that he's comfortable with. He's a very, very, very good kickboxer. But if you don't give him the timing he wants, if you don't give him the space that he wants, if you don't let him reset when he needs to, he just kind of fell apart in that spot. Bryan Battle did an amazing job of making sure that he was always in his face, always making him work, shot in, level changes, make him defend the takedowns, and Kevin just folded under that kind of pressure. He does have good, solid takedown defense, 100% as per the numbers. Bryan Battle shot 3 takedowns on him. Song only shot 1, so it's a small sample size, but he is a big guy with strong hips, and he does know how to defend a takedown. Jonathan is 7-1 over all 25-year-old Aussie. We've got a lot of those on this card, it feels like. You're going to hear the record 7-1 a lot, and you're going to hear these, 25, 24. It's all in that ballpark. He's making his UFC debut off of Dana White's Contender Series, and this kid looks strong, man. Good underhooks, good balance, nice clinch knees. He's a very slick grappler. He was in deep on a choke, and his opponent had him deep on a choke, and he did a good job of staying calm and then reversed the position, took advantage of it. Actually ended up falling to his back, locking up a triangle and tapping his opponent out himself. Very, very good on the ground. This kid knows what he's doing down there. Really dangerous off his back. His hands always stay a little too low for my liking. It does look like you can hit him in the head. He counters aggression well with takedowns. When you start to kind of overswing, you think you've got him, he ducks in on the legs. But he's a bit awkward, man. He can get knocked off balance sometimes. There was a fight that he had against a guy named Bates, and he got knocked down a couple different times, and the guy just started shucking him off, and then he eventually got folded with a big KO, and Bates is like 38 years old or something like that. Jonathan's going to enjoy a 2-inch reach advantage here in this spot. Kevin Jousset is a decent-sized favorite here around minus 250. And Aaron, I kind of think he's the right side. I don't like laying this price tag on a guy like this, but like I said, you need someone who's going to be where you want him to be for Jousset to really get his game going. And I think Jonathan is going to be right where Jousset wants him. He may shoot for the takedowns, but he's got nothing to offer as far as the striking goes. He's nowhere near the level of Kevin Jousset on the feet. So when Kevin defends these takedowns, I kind of feel like this guy's going to be a sitting duck. I think Jousset's going to knock him out.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on this as well. And I like Jonathan Mikhailov a lot, and he beat Mo Ado on Contender Series, who's a guy that I think is one of the best prospects in Canada, although Mo actually just lost, I think, 2 weeks ago here in Toronto at an event. But I really think Mo is a great fighter. And Mikhailov put him away in the first round. So to me, that's a pretty big deal because I think Mo is very good. But like you said, I think that Jousset is just going to have a big advantage on the feet against him. And I don't think that he's going to get baited into any sort of grappling exchanges. And if he can make this a kickboxing fight, unless Mikhailov is able to really kind of make this a gritty fight and shoot takedowns, maybe even pull guard if he needs to, I feel like on the feet. Yeah, I'm sorry to bring back your PTSD from the weekend, but I mean, I just feel like on the feet, Jousset is going to have a big advantage, and the Jousset KO line is like plus 250. That's kind of again, if you want to get a little bit of value extracted from this, I think that's probably the way to do it. But Jousset, I think, is also a guy that you could parlay. I know earlier I said that there's a lot of underdogs that I like on this card. Now I'm just going favorite. Like I think I've gone 3 favorites in a row, but we'll get there. I think we'll get there eventually. But I don't think this is one of the underdogs that I would go with. Again, though, like when you get these guys coming off Contender Series and look good on Contender Series, and you put them in against established guys, like you kind of want to see what he's going to do, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of one of those things where you might want to just stay away overall.
Yeah, I kind of agree with your sentiment about being able to parlay him because we have seen Kevin Jousset kind of be a little bit low volume and has no problem kind of picking and poking his way to a decision if he doesn't land that perfect shot. So I think the decision or KO are both on the table. I don't mind parlaying him up here because I almost feel like this is the thank you fight, Aaron. I kind of feel like this is the, you know what, you took the Bryan Battle fight. That was a bad look for you. We were really trying to build our guy. Thanks for doing that. Now you're at home. You're in your own backyard, and we're going to give you this guy that probably is a pretty good match.
Mikhailov is at home, and Jousset is from France and trains in New Zealand. So,
I'm sorry. I got the hometowns backwards.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
I
got the hometowns
backwards.
Yeah.
Man, because I had City Kickboxing in my head that I was like, of course he's the hometown guy. But no, you're right. Anyway, it still feels like the thank you fight. I don't know. This feels like a drastic step down in competition.
It's either a thank you fight or a show me fight for Mikhailov, right? Like, I mean, as you say, it does train in New Zealand, so he's on that side of the world, and you just make it because it's geographically convenient.
It's one of those things where the UFC, Luke Thomas came on the show, and he said something that really kind of stuck with me, that we always try to get into the head of the UFC, and it's like, what are they doing here? Like, who are they pushing here? Like, who's this fight for? And it's like, sometimes it's because they've got contractual obligations. Sometimes it's just like, hey, we got to get you a fight before the end of the year. Now it's January, it's February, so that's probably not coming into play right now. But if you got to get people 3 fights in a year, it's like this one could just be one that both guys said yes to. So
they're both in the region, and it's easier to fly people from New Zealand to Australia than from the US to Australia. Like there's a lot of different factors that could play into it. Absolutely. And if you look up and down the card, pretty much everybody on it, aside from a handful of fighters, are like all from kind of Asia or Australia, like this kind of region, where it's a little bit easier logistically to get them there, but who knows? Yeah,
good deal. Okay. Jay is back. He says, shout out to Clint for wearing the money hat after losing the money every week. Leader of the X-Men. And you know what? That's good, Jay. The leader of the X-Men is actually, most of the people that talk trash, it's lame and it's weak, but
maybe Wolverine mask next week instead of the hat.
Exactly, right? I'll ditch the hat. I'm pretty close to being Professor Xavier.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're Professor X. We don't know if you're sitting in a wheelchair. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Who can say?
You don't know me. I'll just shave the beard and I'll get. He wears like a yellow suit, right? Like I'll go Professor Xavier for you guys next time, so he can. I'll be leader of the X-Men. I don't mind that at all. All right, guys. Next up, we've got Cody Steele, and he's taking on Wang Zhu. Oh my goodness. Okay. Last week, Aaron, absolutely everybody was making the he's awfully bad jokes, and I can't wait, because this week we're gonna get the how wrong is Wang Zhu. There's always one that it's the low-hanging fruit that everybody's got to go after. Well, I could not have been more wrong on Wang Zhu, because Aaron, I told everybody the last time this kid fought that Road to UFC guys, total fade. They're on the ban list, right? Like, I'm not betting these guys, but there's one. There's one I believe in, and it was Wang Zhu. And I put Wang Zhu in everything. And this is where, when you do the multiple leg parlays thing where you've got the same guy tied into several, it's dangerous, you guys. It's very, very dangerous. If you're wrong, it's nothing but pain for the entire.
I was on the Padilla side, so I mean, I'll take the W on that one.
Good on you. But yeah, so Taco kind of killed my night that last time out. But you know what? I went back and I kind of reran that fight, and Wang Zhu did not look bad. I think I highly underestimated what Padilla was capable of, first and foremost. And then secondly, he actually wasn't out of that fight. Like, when you're watching how the fight is playing out, Wang Zhu had good activity. He was being aggressive. He was coming forward. Even though Taco was, he was parrying and blocking a lot of the shots and stuff like that. On paper, it looked like Wang was probably potentially up around. And then Taco got the timing. Taco found his opening and hit him with just a massive elbow that immediately swole the face of Wang Zhu up. And I got to tell you, Aaron, when it comes to these doctor stoppages, I've been on every single one that has been stopped. There's been one or two that they've checked out and let continue. That's not the guy I'm on. If the doctor comes in and looks at you and they call it off, that's the fighter that I bet on, it seems like. Like, I just have terrible luck when it comes to that kind of stuff. It was a justified stoppage. Wang Zhu's eye was completely shut. There's not a chance in hell he could see anything. It was a beautiful shot by Taco Padilla, but it very much upset me. At any rate, I'm not sure that I'm ready to just jump off the boat and say that Wang Zhu is a complete bum and he's not what I thought. Yes, is he a little bit lower level than I would like him to be? Absolutely. He still is a road to UFC fighter after all. But Cody Steele is another guy who is unknown and is making his UFC debut off Dana White's Contender Series. Now, he comes from a good gym. He's training at Syndicate MMA. He is a BJJ black belt, so he's very talented on the ground. This guy keeps a wide, low stance, and he is very light on his feet. He likes to kind of bounce around, almost karate style. coiled up like he's ready to explode with a big power shot when you give him the chance. But he moves straight forward and straight backwards, Aaron. So that's something where if you can time his exits, you're going to be able to crack on him, because he does not do a whole lot as far as head movement goes, and he wants to get in and shoot. He is almost desperate to close the distance and get in on takedowns. He doesn't set those up very well. He's a bit of a bull in a china shop. He explodes in, and you look at his tape, he runs face first into power shots sometimes. Just because he's decided, I'm going to shoot the takedown, now go. And he just goes face first into his opponent's timing because they see it coming. He does have a very big overhand right. He's kind of your classic wrestle boxer in that manner, where he wants to, you're never sure if it's the overhand coming or if it's the takedown coming. You kind of mix those two things up. But he ducks in, he rolls, he wings big, heavy hooks, and everything he throws is with power. Man, this is almost identical to my last breakdown as far as the line goes. Cody Steele is making his debut as a minus 245 favorite. Rong Zhu is a plus 200 underdog. He was a favorite the last time out, and now here he is a giant underdog. I think that's too much, Aaron. I can't quite, I'm still wrapping bandages around my ass from the last time I bet on Rong Zhu, so I have not locked in a bet yet, but I'm extremely tempted to take a small shot on Rong Zhu as a plus 200 underdog in this spot, because Cody Steele, I don't think, is going to have anything for him on the feet. Now, on the ground, different story. It's probably going to be very competitive on the ground. Cody Steele is very dangerous on the ground. I respect his skill set once it hits the floor. But Rong Zhu is one of the few guys, from Road to UFC who has what appears to be pretty decent wrestling, what appears to be pretty decent takedown defense. I feel like this could be another spot where he has an opportunity to get right against the guy whose skill set is not completely rounded out yet. I expect this to be another competitive fight, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Rong Zhu got a decision here.
Let me give you some background on Cody Steele. So last year on Contender Series, I was at this episode of Contender Series. It was on September 10th. And he was supposed to fight a guy who had beat Alex Pereira in MMA. Cody Steele's a lightweight. This guy, Kamel Otani, made weight and then bounced because he didn't want to face Cody Steele. He left town.
Nice.
After making weight. That's how much people look at Cody Steele and think of how dangerous he could be. This is a lightweight. Have you seen
the video? Have you seen the video of the boxer, the one that just walks out of the ring?
Yeah. That guy didn't even make it to the ring to walk out. He just bounced. Left town. Cody Steele is a very highly credentialed grappler, really, really highly credentialed. He's 29, so he's entering his prime. Rong Zhu is still 24, 25, but he's got 31 fights under his belt. So the experience in terms of in cage has to go to Rong Zhu when you're talking MMA. I think Cody Steele is a really good prospect, and I would be surprised if Rong Zhu beat him. So I'm going to side with Cody Steele here. I'm curious what the submission prop is. I'm actually going to take a quick look. Steele by submissions plus 400. For a guy with those kind of grappling chops, I know if you look at his MMA credentials, it's mostly striking that he's beating guys with. And maybe the books, for whatever reason, aren't taking into account how good of a grappler this guy is. But that might be the play, man. Plus 400 for submission for a guy that has those kind of BJJ accolades, grappling accolades. That's probably going to be a dart throw for me this week, is Cody Steele by submission.
Yeah, that's not so bad. I do like when you get somebody who is credentialed the way that he is, and they give you that kind of a price tag on their sub line. It's just almost an instant click. You almost kind of have to. Looking back at Rong Zhu, he's got an 85% takedown defense rating over the course of his UFC run. But you look at his last fight on Road to UFC, which I suspect are not taken into account for some of these. Oh, actually, never mind. They are taken into account, and this is exactly why. He held his opponent, Haraguchi, to 4 of 25 takedown attempts. Now, Steele, obviously, we can probably expect to have better takedowns than Haraguchi does. Aaron, I always say it's kind of a blanket thing. American wrestling, people who wrestle over here, they're better at cutting weight. That's something a lot of Asian fighters, don't do naturally growing up. And so we see a lot of wrestlers that are thicker, bigger, stronger, and we've been wrestling since, 6 years old over here sometimes. That's not what they do over in Asia necessarily. They're doing jiu-jitsu, karate, things of that nature. So usually American wrestlers are much, much more able in that kind of an area. So I would just suspect that Cody Steele probably is going to have success where Horiguchi maybe didn't, but that takedown defense rating of 85% is something that I can't necessarily ignore, and it's going to be a striker versus grappler fight. Oh, we'll see, man. I don't know what to do with this one. I might just have to pass and stay off of it because my my Zhurong radar has been very incorrect the last couple of fights. So I think I probably just have to go ahead and pass, and I'll tip my cap to you, and you can have your Cody Steele.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Steele by sub. I think that there's some value there.
I like it. And my guy Dan just never misses the opportunity. He says, if you think we ain't making jokes this week, then I'm sorry, my friend, but Zhurong. Nailed it, Dan. Nailed it. All right. Next fight up.
That's why you don't want to pick the guy. If you pick the guy, then all those jokes flow.
Exactly. Exactly.
I guess if Steele loses, you can make the same joke.
You've got the battle of the names here on this one, Aaron. You've got Topuria versus Thickenese, which Thickenese is going to get a lot of attention.
Down with the thickness.
Yeah, exactly. Down with the thickness. You'll love to see it. So I don't think I'm breaking news here when I let you guys know that this is Ilia Topuria's brother. We have the other Topuria making his UFC debut. He is 5-1. He is 29 years old, and he's similarly built to Ilia, except he's got a bit of a larger upper body. I feel like this guy skips leg day sometimes, man. He's got big old shoulders. He's very broad up on top, big powerful back, good big strong body lock type takedowns. He's got a smash and pass grappling style. Looks like he inherited the family explosiveness. He's got that big right hand. That's his favorite weapon. He just keeps that thing cocked 24/7. You know what the weapon of choice is, and it doesn't seem to matter. He's going to find it anyway. He does have one loss. Now, it was all the way back in 2015, and he was making a fight. He had a fight against a guy who was making his debut. I apologize. Let me rephrase that. The debutant, who now is 4-0 undefeated, was a 40-year-old looking man who was on every steroid in the book. Like, it didn't look like they were in the same weight class the night they fought, Aaron. So he got knocked out, and he was much, much younger at that point. So the 5-1, you kind of can forgive just a little bit on that one. Colby Thickenese, 7-0, undefeated. He's going to have Volk in his corner, so a lot's being made of the rematch between Volk and Ilia on fight night here. They're just kind of living vicariously through their fighters. Thickenese is 25 years old. He's another tall and lanky, skinny type of fighter. Very aggressive with his takedowns and his grappling. I'll be honest with you, though, Aaron. Just looking at the fights, Colby really hasn't been tested. He hasn't faced a whole lot of resistance in his career up until this point with the UFC. And you look at some of the records of the guys that he's been facing, and this is not the end all be all, obviously. There's people who have done this before and been very successful. But, you know, his 5-3, 4-2 last couple of fights, that's about as good as it gets. Because then you're getting 3-3, 4-7, 0-0, 3-3, 6-5.
You can't play this card when you're looking at, if you're going to look at just him. Like, you got to look at Aleksandre Topuria and his level of opposition, which is way worse.
That's fair. That's
way
fair.
Worse.
Oh, my God. Aaron, I did it again. I am mixing my fighters up. This is a point I meant to have about Topuria, not about Thickenese. I do apologize.
Yeah, because Thickness just won the Hex Championship, and Hex is like a pretty reputable Australian promotion, and that was like a month and a half ago.
That's on me, you guys. That's on me. 3-1 from Segas, 1-9 Alberto Ibanez, 7-18. Those are the guys Topuria is beating. And so I apologize. The point was meant to be made about Topuria, not about Thickenese, you guys. So yeah, this is obviously a situation where the brother is getting into the UFC. And Aaron, I have long said that siblings, there's always an A side, right? You never have two guys that are, or two girls even, you know, you never have a pair of siblings that are both equal in skill and talent, that are going to head the same direction. Look at the Shevchenko sisters. You know what I mean? Like, there's always one who has just the B subset of the skills that their sibling had. So a lot's being made of this Topuria making his UFC debut, and I'm just not sold, Aaron. That's all this comes down to, is I am simply just not sold that this Topuria is anywhere near the level. Obviously, he's nowhere near the level of his brother, but I'm not sure he's going to be a guy that hangs around the UFC for very long, frankly. This should be a fun fight. You've got the corners going after it. Topuria is a -455 favorite, and much like a lot of these fights, Aaron, I just can't get to that price tag here. Now, he might look like a 10-1 favorite if he lands early. You know, if that right hand has nuclear power in it, if he lands that right hand early, he will put this guy to sleep. That's what they do. The Topurias and the Georgians, they've got that kind of power. But I can't get to that here. His opponent, plus 350 if you want to roll the dice on Colby Thickenese with the experience. I kind of don't like how long and how spindly he gets. You know, if he gets the grappling going and really makes Topuria work, survive some of these grappling exchanges, I think he can wear him out, maybe make him quit a little bit later, you know, back control right his way to a decision. There's ways Thickenese wins this fight. My gut says Topuria is going to catch him with a missile at some point. I just don't like this price tag. I'm not going to get involved at this number. I will pick Topuria to win, but guys, this is not a fight I'm going to be betting. What are you doing here, Aaron?
You got to do the sibling fade. Like on principle, you got to do the sibling fade because there's where is this price tag? Like there's got to be some Topuria name value built into this price tag. These people see Topuria and they're like, oh, I got to bet this guy. It's Ilya's brother, or you know, look at that last name. It's like if you see Nurmagomedov. Like there's always Nurmagomedov name value, just like we saw this past weekend with Saeed. You know, whenever you have that name value built in, cooked into the price, you got to take that into account. And I think there's a lot of name value cooked into this price. You know, Thickness is taking this on short notice, which is something you got to take into account. But I mean, right now, this line just keeps climbing. You can get Thickness at almost plus 400 right now in some markets. Like, because, hey, I mean, listen, Ilya said, I think my brother's better than I am. I think he's going to be a champion one day. And you know that, like, he's getting lots of good looks in the gym because he trains with Ilya all the time. But then you look at Thickness and he's training with Volk all the time. Like, he's getting same kind of high level looks at his gym. So, like you almost have that almost has to like cancel each other out at this point in time. Thickness has fought the better level of competition, but again, it's matchup dependent. If you think that Aleksandre Topuria is going to be able to put him away, or there's something you're seeing that, you know, hey, more power to you. But I'm doing the sibling fade because, like you said, like we've seen a lot of siblings get into the UFC, and like Francisco Figueiredo, for example. And you mentioned Antonina Shevchenko, and they get all of they always get these big lines because of the last name. I feel like you have to capture that value whenever you can. And hey, if he proves to be the real deal and ends up being the bantamweight champion one day, again, more power to him. And I hope he proves me wrong. I hope everybody that I go against, please do your best to prove me wrong. I'm not here to like side against you. I've seen it too many times, and I think that when you're getting this kind of a price tag, you got to test the waters a little bit.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Justin in the chat saying if siblings curse was not real, Hua Ninja Shogun and Hua brother would have been champ already. Yeah, Justin, I look back at like the Nogueira brothers, and even then, you know, you had Big Nog who got the belt and Little Nog who never cracked being a contender. Like, you know, it's one of those things where it's just one of those things. Guys in the chat, you know what? I see a lot of discourse in the chat, and you guys know the rules. We do no racism, no sexism, no hate speech. We're not doing politics here. If you don't do that, you're welcome to hang out. Matt Norton might be an asshole, but he's not doing anything that's breaking any of the rules, you guys. He's allowed to have his opinion, and I have had a bad year. He's not lying about that, so I do apologize. The best thing you guys can do, believe it or not, if you go over to your right hand next to his name on YouTube, you yourself actually can mute him, so you never have to see a comment that he says. I'm not going to ban him unless he breaks one of the rules. That's how it goes, and we'll see if we can win the guy over with kindness because he's here, right? So he's listening, he's paying attention.
Technically, if you listen to Larry David, because you're a member of the bald community, it could be constituted as a hate crime. I'm just saying.
I do listen to Larry David. I do enjoy some Larry David, and we will defend the balds, absolutely. My guy, Dan Levy in the house, member of the Bald Gang as well. So we definitely got to watch out for that. All right, guys. Next fight up, we got Cong Wang coming back here, taking on Bruna, Brasil. And Aaron, again, oh my God, like this entire card is just bad memories for me. Cong Wang is a prospect who I absolutely bought 1,000% into. You know, they're trying to do the Alex Pereira with Cong Wang. She's got a storyline with the champion Valentina Shevchenko. She's got the win over her in kickboxing back in the day. So they're really trying to like build up anybody for Valentina Shevchenko to fight in this weight class. And this was supposed to be the one. She makes it to the UFC and she just ices Victoria Leonardo. Like Cong Wang has power in her hands that is rare for women, especially of this weight class. And I really thought we were on to something here. Now, the UFC throws her Gabriela Fernandez in her next fight, and I made the mistake of shortchanging Gabriela Fernandez. I had a lot of money riding on Cong Wang in that fight. I thought it was going to be a decision just because of how tough Gabriela Fernandez is, but she can throw heavies too. And honestly, Aaron, I think this was a situation where Cong Wang looked past her opponent to some extent. I feel like she came in cocky, and I feel like she disregarded the power and striking ability of her opponent, because there were multiple times where she would throw, and then instead of being ready to counter or avoid her opponent's return, she kept her hands low, bit down, and went to throw again, where it was just like, no, it's me. It's my show. I'm going again. And she completely disrespected Gabriela, and it cost her. She ate a head kick that rocked her. Gabriela took her back and tapped her out. Night, it's over. And props to her. She's making a quick turnaround, Cong Wang is, and coming right back here. The UFC, in my opinion, doing what they do best and trying to get her back on track, throwing her another little bit of a softball. Bruna, Brazil, 31 years old, wins and losses alternating since coming off of Dana White's Contender Series. I thought this girl was so bad, Aaron, that I bet Molly Meatball McCann against her. I actually put my money on Molly Meatball against Bruna Brazil because I thought that's how bad she was. One of the things that she really struggles with, Aaron, is her cardio. She has a very, very good kicking offense, but there's not a ton of power in her kicks. It's more of a range game. And her cardio is very grappling reliant. You know, if she's not able to get it going, you shuck a couple takedowns, she'll fade down the stretch. You know, Luma Lukbunmi was able to trip and dump her all over the place and keep her off balance, so she wasn't able to get her game going there. Denise Gomes obviously landed on her with some serious power when she slowed down and was able to ice her and put her away. And again, even in the Molly McCann fight, she was slowing down in that fight. She was able to get her wrestling and her grappling going and put Molly on her back. But in the third round, when Molly, started the fight back on her feet, she landed a couple big shots. You could see the panic kind of coming around in Bruna Brazil's eyes yet again. I know she's better than I'm making her out to sound, but I just don't think Bruna Brazil is much of anything. I think she's going to alternate wins and losses for a bit and then probably end up getting the boot at some point. And it seems like the UFC has a lot more to gain from Cong Wang getting on track here than they do Bruna Brazil having a late career resurgence at the age of 31 years old. Can she take Cong Wang down and out grapple her? Potentially. I do think that is the test that the UFC is setting forth, but I kind of think that bad cardio parachute is there, that Cong Wang can turn up in rounds 2 and rounds 3, even if she doesn't have the skill set to defend early on. Hate the number, like a lot of these. I do not like the minus 485 that Cong Wang currently sits at, but Aaron, I do think she gets back on track. I think her hands are just going to be too fast, and I think eventually, and probably in the second or the third round, she'll end up clipping Bruna Brazil with something she can't come back from. I think she's going to get another highlight reel KO in this fight, and I think she'll get back on track.
All right, well, if Wang Cong does win on Saturday, that would mean that the Fighting Nerds would have lost 2 weeks in a row. They'd be 0-2 to start the year. The Fighting Nerds have had a great track record, and I think Bruna is, she keeps training there, and I think that she's going to be making improvements. It's a tricky one because, Bruna is more a striking-based fighter than she is a grappling-based fighter. But if they say, hey, this is like, it's grappling time, let's get our wrestling boots on, let's get our singlet on, and let's try to take Wang Cong down, you might want to just throw a dart on Bruna by sub at plus 1,600. Like, again, it's just a total flyer dart, because if she is going to beat her, I think that's probably how she does it. I don't think she's going to be able to win a decision. I certainly don't think she's going to be able to knock her out. But I think that, that the sub is always going to be on the table with Wang Cong, because she's so much a striking-based fighter. And we saw what happened in the last fight against Fernandez. I think her grappling still needs a lot of work. And if Brazil comes in with a tactical game plan, I thought that Myra's game plan against Jasmine, her coaches kept saying to her, stay on the feet with her. You don't need to go to the ground. You're landing bigger shots. And I kind of agreed with them in the corner with that advice. And she kept kind of deferring to her submission game. And I think that as the fight went down, I think it sort of became sub or bust, because she had to dig herself out of a hole. But I personally think that Bruna, for the Fighting Nerds are very good at calculating what your best way to win is. They don't need you to play to your strengths. They want you to play to your opponent's weaknesses. So I'd be a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger on Wang Cong. But if you can get, what's the Wang Cong KO prop? It's plus 225. That's definitely on the table. That's some really strong value. So
Aaron,
you can play both sides. You can do Cong KO plus 225, and you could do plus 1600 for Bruna Brazil sub, and just see where the dominoes fall. Maybe you're losing both.
The under.
Hey. Yeah, or bet the under.
I don't mind violence. I do think one way or the other, this fight probably ends inside the distance. Cong has gone to decision a couple of times, so she could potentially come out here, secure the win, play it safe, that kind of a game plan. It's totally, totally possible. But yeah, man, we are Bet Openly here, right? Like, we're a Bet Openly crew here. They sponsor the show. We love Bet Openly. By the way, guys, link in the description below. Go click and sign up. But FanDuel does those round 2 and round 3 combo props, and I don't think anybody else does those. I would love to take a look when it drops for the KO 2-3 for
I like that.
Here.
Yeah, I like that too.
You either have to play the 2-3 by itself and then split it like half unit, or you have to play the KO by itself. You can combine those two and get the KO specifically 2-3, and the number will be a little bit better for kind of narrowing it down, I think, in that way. So that would be a half decent shot to look at, I think, once those props drop a little bit more.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that for sure.
Yeah. And just, Matt, I know we've had our differences, but Thiago Moises is splitting time between ATT and the Fighting Nerds, so I'm not sure. Do we give the Fighting Nerds the full-on win for him in that last fight? Because I think he's still mostly
ATT. He had ATT in his corner. Like, I believe it was all ATT coaches in his corner.
I think he went out and did some work with the Fighting Nerds, but he's not a Fighting Nerd. He's from ATT. And you know what, you guys, I know the Fighting Nerds are kind of lighting the world on fire right now, but there's only so much you can polish a turd. I hate to say it that way, but I just don't think Bruna Brazil is going to be long-term UFC caliber. And even if she is training in the best place with the best camp, people who have very, very good skills and very, very good game plans, that doesn't mean she's going to stick to it. That doesn't mean she'll be able to implement it. I feel like her ceiling may just be capped, and this is the type of spot where she'll fall short. Just my personal assessment, obviously. You guys do what you want to do. Let's see. Dixon Sider letting us know, yeah, they didn't help MBS at all. Oh, you guys have no idea. I was like, Fighting Nerds? Myra Bueno? Oh, sign me up. And yeah, she looked like same old Myra Bueno Silva. Can't you get the girl some EPO or something? Come on now. Tom Nolan takes on Slava Klaz in our next fight. Viacheslav Borshchev returning to the UFC. And Aaron, this one is driving me nuts. This fight is driving me just a little bit nuts because much like many of these, that's the wrong way to say that. Like a lot of these upcoming newcomers, the UFC is like, let me just tangent here for a sec before I get back to my point. I know this is just a horrible way to start the breakdown, guys. I apologize. The UFC is starving for stars right now, Aaron. We are running low on star power. There's just not that many people who have gripped the minds and hearts of the MMA community as they rise up the ranks and things like that. And you're getting guys like Israel Adesanya, who he's only 35 years old. You know what I mean? He's not at the point where he has to retire because physically he's done, but he might be toast. We might have seen him the last time. Maybe he's got 1 or 2 fun fights left in him, but he's never going to command the way he did when he was on top. He burnt out extremely early in his career because of the amount of activity he had. They are dying for people to step in there and take the reins. And then you've got guys like Peyton Talbot, who are supposed to be that next guy, that take a giant L and a huge step back. Now, I think a guy like Talbot obviously is going to be fine long-term, but it just hurts their immediate star power. So they're pushing people way too fast. They're pushing people way too hard because they're trying to manufacture a star right now. Tom Nolan seems like somebody the UFC wants to get behind. He makes his UFC debut against Nicholas Mota and gets absolutely sparked. Aaron, that's the biggest red flag for me on Tom Nolan. I actually considered betting Alex Reyes by knockout when they fought. I might have actually sprinkled that now that I say that, because it was like a ridiculous number. And I've seen Tom Nolan dropped in every single one of his fights. Even the fights he's winning, even the fights that he ends up finishing. This kid eats flush punches and crumples over and falls face first down on the mat and then has to wipe the floor and pick himself back up before he comes back and gets some of these wins. He's a finisher, which we love to see. but he gets over aggressive looking for that finish. Even if his opponent isn't necessarily hurt, sometimes he'll just get a little impatient and then he'll blitz and he'll leave himself wide open for counters, even when he's doing a perfect job of controlling the range and staying on the outside and hurting people from distance where they can't quite get to him. Now, the Alex Reyes fight actually did show some improvement in exactly that area. He won a decision in that fight and was able to maintain the range, stayed at distance, didn't rush it, didn't push it. A lot of people were expecting a finish, and I think he did the thing that we see from time to time with these developing fighters, where they take a fight they know they can win quickly, and they get the minutes, right? They win the full 15 minutes in the cage because that guy is not a threat to me. And I think that's a smart way of developing themselves. But I'm not convinced that just because he was able to beat the worst Reyes brother, back to the, A side, B side brother situation, because he was able to beat the worst Reyes brother, I don't think he's magically fixed these issues, right? Viacheslav Borshchev is 8-4-1, 33 years old. So, he's at the tail end of his prime or whatever is left of it. But this guy is such a nasty striker, Aaron. This is a very, very dangerous test for Tom Nolan. My boy Chase Hooper passed with flying colors, but it wasn't without its moments of horror and terror, because that's what Slava does to literally everybody. And that's because Chase Hooper has a ground game. You know that you can do whatever you want to Slava on the ground. He's got a 25% takedown defense rating. That might be the lowest one in the UFC right now. Nobody wants to strike with this guy because he's such a filthy animal on the feet. They've got to take him down to get the win. And if you don't have that path to victory, you're going to have to stand with him. The people who have had to stand with him, it didn't end well. Now, Dakota Bush, Mahashat, Lontop, none of those guys are with the UFC anymore. So it's a relatively low level of guys that have gotten the wins. But he has lumped up several people that he's fought on the way. Mike Davis had his bad moments. He went to a decision draw with Nazim Sadikov, rocked him multiple times in that fight. We're lucky Chase Hooper has a brick for a head because he took a couple big shots in that fight too. Tom Nolan is exactly the kind of guy that I want to fade with Slava, because I don't see Tom Nolan coming out here and showing off his grappling game for 15 straight minutes. I think eventually we are going to end up in a situation where we are standing on the feet and trading. And I trust Slava's chin far more than I trust Tom Nolan's at this point. And I do think that Viacheslav is still the much better striker at this stage of his career, even though Tom is younger, longer, probably a little bit faster. And I know those are usually the dynamics that you want to put your money on. I just think Slava is going to hit him with something that's too hard for him to take at some point during this fight. I'm not going to bet him as a favorite. This line, in my opinion, would be far more enticing were it backwards. I want Slava as a plus money underdog, not as the slight favorite. And that is kind of my hang up here. Slava is a minus 135 favorite. Tom Nolan, the plus 115 underdog at the moment. And a lot of money coming in here on Tom Nolan to go ahead and get on track. If this line flips, I'll be tempted to try and fade absolutely everybody and get Slava Claus at Pick'em or at plus money. We'll see if it gets that far. So I'm just going to kind of hold for the moment, Aaron. We'll see where this number goes. But yeah, I'm picking Slava, and I think he catches Tom with something big at some point in this fight. The other option, though, violence. Because let's be real. If Tom Nolan wins this fight, he's going to crack something big on Slava. He's not going to control him for 15 minutes. I have a real hard time seeing this fight go 15 minutes. So picking aside, but I'll take the under.
Well, I'll say this, if you like Tom Nolan, take the KO prop at plus 280, because that's kind of his path, right? He's going to need to put Borshchev away, I think. And I'm kind of with you overall. I think if this line tightens up a little bit, I'll probably be on the Borshchev side, because if this is going to be a striking affair, which all indication is that it will be, my only hesitation is that Borshchev hasn't really fought a lot of tall guys like Nolan. Nolan's 6'3". He's a bigger guy. That being said, I think that he is the better striker. I think that he does have the better chin. And I think that when you put Borshchev in a stylistically favorable matchup for him, he tends to win those fights. So I think that if this line tightens up a little bit more, gets the minus 120 area code, that's where Borshchev would be a little bit more attractive to me. But I think that if you are looking to get some sort of value out of Tom Nolan, I think the plus 280 on the KO is the way to do it, because if he's going to win, and I think Borshchev's chin is going to start to fail him as his career winds down, as you saw against just how much damage he sustained in that fight against
He's taken
Chase Hooper.
so much.
Right? So I think that the Nolan KO prop at plus 280 is certainly, you couldn't go wrong with that.
Yeah. That's probably not a bad way to look at it. Let me see. Bet Online sometimes has their totals out early. Let me see if they've got this one.
They've got it. Yeah, they've got the under 1.5 at even money, and I'm not sure if I love that.
That's tough. The 1.5s are really, really rough.
Yeah, that's like the correct line to set, though, I think.
You know what, though? Fight doesn't go the distance at minus 350. I know it's pricey, but I wouldn't mind parlaying that. You know, sometimes you could chalk up sometimes and find some good stuff that way. I feel like this is a perfect fight where we could get a little chalky here and lay the minus 350 to bring the price tag down on another leg that you liked or something like that. And I don't see this fight hitting the judges' scorecards. I just don't.
Yeah,
shout out my guy Parlay MMA in the house. What's going on, Nolan? Thanks for being here. That was last week's guest, you guys, if you didn't check him out. And another familiar face. See my guy Dan Tom in the house. What's going on, buddy? Thank you for being here as well. TMC MMA, got to get the shout out going there. What's going on, buddy? How you doing? 30 Reg in the house, getting caught up. All right, we got more of our familiar faces rolling in here, you guys. We've got 570 live viewers here on the show. Do me a favor, please get subscribed if you have not yet. And if you don't know our friend Aaron Bronstetter from UFC fame, you should give him a follow as well. One of the best interviewers in the business. Absolutely love the guy sharing some time with us here, breaking down these fights. Next up, we've got Jack Jenkins, and he takes on Gabriel Santos. What a fight. This is going to be an absolute banger here, Aaron. I love this fight. Gabriel Santos, I want to start on that side. I think this kid is the goods. Touch of death, for those of you who believe in that. 11-2, 28 years old. He is, I believe, you know what? I want to double check that because people have been getting on me about my accuracy here. I typed this number backwards, you guys. He is 1-2 in the UFC. I typed 2-1. That's my bad. Fat fingers over here. 1-2 in the UFC. Shoot the box, BJJ black belt, all the stuff that you want to see. His first 2 fights right out the gate, Aaron, just brutal. You know, Lerone Murphy is potentially dark horse, right? Yeah, 15-0-1, just a guy that could be in the contenders circle, maybe one day, you know, getting a crack at the title. One of those guys that is just a beast. And making your UFC debut at short notice against that guy, oh, good luck. David Onama, 13-2. Just absolutely shining like the star the UFC is looking for right now. Crazy cardio, filthy power, developing skill set, extremely young. That is a monster that you're dealing with right there. So going 0-2 in your first 2 fights against those guys, I can't hold that against Gabriel Santos. And he gave Lerone Murphy fits. He gave Murphy everything he could handle in that UFC debut. He almost got the win. And then getting sparked by a guy like Onama, I just really can't hold that against you here. Now, he got the win over Yizaw in his next fight, which really was just a massive softball. That was never going to be anything that you needed to worry about, but this guy's very heavy on his feet. He's got that Brazilian Muay Thai plotting style, steps in looking for power shots. He likes to cause hell and then see if you're capable of walking through it to meet him in the middle. But he's also got the ability to grapple. This guy's got very nice level changes, very good timing on his takedowns, and he just beats you up. And then when you're starting to wear down a little bit, when you're ready for that next kick to come, he puts you on your ass, and he ends up getting on top of you and making you work up, back up to the cage. He's got great cardio. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage in this spot. I just love everything I see from Gabriel Santos. And I think this is a much needed reset on his career trajectory to kind of get him back on track here. Jack Jenkins, 13-3, 31 years old. And another guy that I like. This one hurts my soul just a little bit because both these are guys that I like. Both these are guys that I'm excited about watching fight. When he came to the UFC, though, it was a bit of a tough start here with that arm injury against Chepe. A fight where, once again, like I told you, Aaron, just my luck right now could not be worse. I had Jack Jenkins in that fight, and sure enough, he completely destroys his arm in a freak accident to have that fight go completely off the rails. I like the way Jack Jenkins strikes. You know, the 3 and 4 punch combos, finishing things with the kicks, the way he mixes it up to the head, to the body. You never know where that next strike is going to come to. And he just tries to kind of cook you through the body work over the course of a 15-minute fight. He's one of these guys that can break people's legs, like quite literally break people's legs with his leg kicks. It is a huge weapon for him. The one area in his career that he seems to have struggled most is going to be the grappling. He gets taken down pretty regularly, and most of his losses, or I believe all of his finish losses, except for the freak TKO, he's got 2 losses by submission. The submission defense has been something, he's working on it, but that's been the problem throughout his career. And that's frankly where I think this fight comes down to. I believe this fight's going to be very close on the feet. Both these guys have power. Both these guys can take a shot. Both these guys have good volume. I think it's going to be a bloodbath on the feet. But Gabriel Santos can take this fight to the ground, I think, anytime he wants to. You go back and you watch the Jenkins fight with the lesser of the Burns brothers. Man, that ever since we said the A and B side brother thing, it just keeps coming back around on these guys.
Keeps coming up.
Not intentional, but a good note because it's coming back around, man. He did get the round 3 TKO win over Herbert Burns. And in that fight, he had Burns dead to rights. Everybody knows Herbert Burns is not a UFC level guy. He's got UFC level offense for about 4 minutes, and that's it. We knew the cook was going to come, but Herbert was able to go, you know what? I'm tired of you kicking my leg. Let me take you down. And he had no problem doing it as soon as he wanted to. Jack Jenkins could not stop the takedowns of Herbert Burns. Now, his submission defense held up. He was able to keep Herbert from really doing anything effectively down there and then hurt him deeper on into the fight. I think this fight is going to look very, very similar to that, where Gabriel Santos will be able to say, you know what, I don't like what's happening here, and just take it to the ground whenever he needs to. He's another, minus 250 ballpark favorite on this card, and I am picking him to win on this one, Aaron. I like Gabriel Santos. I actually threw him into a parlay myself, and I think he'll be able to utilize his grappling when he needs to go ahead and get the win in this spot.
I'm with you, and the thing about Gabriel Santos is he's also very opportunistic, and I like the sub prop at plus 450. I think he's going to be fishing for subs, and I think, like you mentioned with Jenkins, his losses, the only 2 that weren't by injury, were by sub. So I think that if Santos dictates the terms of this fight and comes into it with a sound game plan where he doesn't want to stand and trade with Jack Jenkins, because like you said, I think that Jenkins on the feet, that's a little bit more of an evenly matched fight. In fact, Jenkins might even have a small advantage on the feet over Santos. But if Santos takes it to the ground, I think Santos at plus 450 by sub is a really, really juicy prop that I like a lot. So I'm going to go with that. I think the world of Santos. I'm actually shocked that he's 1-2. But like you look at that Lerone Murphy fight, that was a close fight that probably could have gone his way on the judges' scorecards. It was a split decision, and he took him down 5 out of 11 times in that fight. And Lerone Murphy's got good takedown defense. So I think that for the most part, like if he decides the terms of this fight and he wants to take it to the ground, I think he's going to be fishing for submissions. And I think if he can eventually get one, plus 450, I like that price a lot.
Okay. I like it. I'm glad we're lining up on that one, and I like that number on the submission prop because that'll make it into the sub special parlay at the end of the week for sure. Because I do think he's very, very live to go ahead and finish the fight once he gets his grappling going in this kind of a position. So very happy to see we line up on that one. Let's go Santos. All right, guys, quick break here to shout out the sponsors of the show. First off, we have got Spectation Sports. If you guys haven't signed up, please do. There's lots of awesome content coming to Spectation Sports. They are really becoming the hub of regional scene MMA, and I believe they've got a relationship with BetMGM, so you can actually get in there and bet some of these fights. FAC 28 coming up. The Mecca is returning, and we've got a lot of young, exciting prospects and just more MMA for you guys to enjoy. Using the link in the description below, you'll get 20% off when you sign up using promo code DIEHARD. Next up, we've got fight numbers for you guys, and I forgot to log in, so I can't even show you most of the tools here. Fight numbers, John Kelly's boys, and they've got the best odds screen in the business. They are excellent tools for your DFS type stuff. If you're a fantasy player, make sure you check out their stuff. They've got excellent stuff for you to learn from. They've actually helped me out a lot when it comes to the daily fantasy stuff, trends, analysis. You can do the ownership projections, stuff like that, so you can try to find that hidden gem of a fighter that nobody else is going to be in on. Great product. Again, link in the description below is going to get you a break on your sign up if you want to check out their services. And last but certainly not least, our people over at Bet Openly. You guys, Aaron, I got to tell you, I tried to entice everybody here to go ahead and get in here on Bet Openly a couple of weeks ago, and I think I got a little overzealous. I made too small of a window. I said if we get 100 signups in 1 week for Bet Openly, that I will wax my chest, Aaron. I will do it on camera. I'll film it. I'll let you guys all laugh at me. And I think I just didn't give us enough time. So I'm repeating the challenge, you guys. We have some signups. We've gotten them, just not quite enough. If you guys want to laugh hysterically at me and watch me scream and cry like a little girl as I get my chest waxed, get signed up on Bet Openly using the link in the description below. This is peer-to-peer betting, you guys, so the numbers are going to be better for everybody on both sides of the equation. And let's find a fight, for example, here.
Just so we're clear, by the way, it's just Clint. That offer applies to just Clint.
That's right. I'm not making Aaron do this one with me. Sometimes I try to loop the guest in on the challenge, right? I'll let you slide on this one, Aaron. But the numbers are going to be better for everybody on Bet Openly, you guys. And I know that sometimes it can be a bit of a pain to like get signed up and get all your information verified, things of that nature. You will save more money long-term using Bet Openly than any sign-up bonus you're going to get from any other book in the entire world. I promise you, if you guys try it, give it a shot, you will love it. You will save money, and it's going to be your best tool out there, especially if you're living in a state where they don't have legalized sports betting yet. I always use this example. California is a perfect example. They are not legalized over there, so you can use Bet Openly in California. It's a great tool to have, especially when you're traveling. Viacheslav Borshchev on here is minus 138. Tom Nolan is a matching plus 138. You're not going to get the minus 165, plus 120 type of splits that some of these bookies try to rob you with, guys. The winner of the bet will pay the 1% for the transaction, and that's it. So over time, you're going to save piles of money using the service. Please check out Bet Openly. Use the link in the description below for me. And again, guys, if you need any other motivation, I'll wax my damn chest. It's going to be fun. I'm going to hate it, but I have no problem laughing at myself, so you guys can get on board and test this tool out. So get in there for me, please. Do me a favor. All right, guys, back to UFC 312. We've got Jake Matthews, and he's taking on Francisco Prado, a fight that I did not expect to see booked, Aaron. I wasn't ready for this one. Prado, let's just kind of get you guys caught up to speed here. He's a 155-pounder. He is moving up to 170 pounds here for this fight, which I found a little bit surprising at first. But this kid is somebody who I've kind of had circled as a talent that I think is going to do big things in the UFC as he gets going here. 12-2, 22 years old. He's got 3 UFC fights, just 1-2 in those UFC fights to this point. But I love everything I see from this kid. He is mean. He is hell on wheels. Now, he makes his UFC debut against Jamie Mullarkey, and it was definitely an out-of-your-depth type of situation. He wasn't quite able to manage the range. He was kind of chasing Jamie around the octagon, and then Jamie did a good job of changing levels as soon as he needed to keep this kid off of him, and grinded his way to a decision. But then we saw what Francisco was really made of when they booked him against Ottman Azaitar. Now, the Azaitar brothers are nothing to write home about, but this kid's got nasty power, Aaron. He got in there, and he traded. He went to war with Azaitar and got him out of there in the very first round. It was very clear that he just couldn't handle it. And then they booked him against Daniel Zellhuber. Now, I don't know what was going on here, because kind of like we talked about earlier in the night, Aaron, where you never know what the UFC's plan is. This one almost felt to me like it was a we don't care which prospect goes up from here. You know what I mean? It's like we've got 2 really hot potentials, and whoever wins, we're going to push. We're good with. And Zellhuber ended up getting his hand raised. He fought the perfect fight. He kept the range. Prado wasn't quite able to, close the distance and things like that. He struggled with that range and that reach and that distance. And Zellhuber just really fought a beautiful fight, did everything perfectly that night, and fought his way to a decision. It was a fight of the night bonus type of situation. So now Prado is going to move up to 170 pounds. And I'm not always a fan of fighters switching weight classes like this, especially because Prado doesn't necessarily seem like the biggest 155er we've ever seen. However, when you go back and you watch some of his weigh-ins, Aaron, he is sucked out. Like, he looks like he's got a smaller frame, but you can see in his face, like, how badly he's sucked out to make weight at 155 pounds. It does take a toll on him. And at just 22 years old, this kid is only going to get bigger. I think those weight cuts were already a problem for him, maybe more so than people are noticing at this stage. And he's making an early decision to move up to 170 pounds where he probably knows he's going to be in the future, because he won't be able to keep that cut going. Jake Matthews, the Celtic kid, it's going to be a fight in his backyard from Australia, 20-7. I've had good results on Jake Matthews for the most part, Aaron, because I don't know what it is, but I've just had a pretty good read on him. I was able to back him against Andre Fialho. I was able to fade him with Matt Semmelsberger. I was able to fade him with Michael Morales. The one that I got wrong was the Phil Rowe fight. And that one pissed me off to no end because Phil Rowe had that fight in the bag. You watch that fight back, it was 1-1 going into round 3. Phil Rowe gets the takedown, gets on top of this guy, and it's perfect. If he just chills out, throws some elbows, Jake Matthews has a tendency to play guard. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's always been very good, and he'll do a lot of guard playing if you just give him the opportunity to. And Phil got a little too fancy. He decided to try to make a sweeping transition, take the back, fell off, couldn't get those long, lanky-ass legs in for the hooks on the back that he was looking for. Jake shakes him off, and then Jake ends up on top for the rest of the round. And it's a very, very close decision that goes 29-28 the other way. So I actually stand by the fact that Phil Rowe had that fight and just lost it with one singular bad decision in the third round. But that doesn't change the way I feel about Jake Matthews. Frankly, he's just kind of mid everywhere. He's got good boxing. He's got good hands. He's got decent power, but it's not great. His hands are pretty quick, but they're not the fastest I've ever seen. He can wrestle. He chooses not to more often than not. He also is very good at jiu-jitsu, but he's willing to go off of his back, and he'll stay on his back. Again, like I said, if you invite him down to the ground, he has no problem playing from his guard. Jake Matthews is going to be a little bit bigger here in this spot, probably being the natural 170-pounder. He will have a 4-inch reach advantage, and that does concern me a little bit. But frankly, the last couple fights, you see Jake just getting into the pocket and looking to trade boxing combos. And I think Prado is a much cleaner boxer than he is. Prado rolls, and he's got these big hooks, and he has very good head movement, and he's going to have a massive speed advantage in this spot, Aaron. Speed kills. Give me Prado. I put 2 units on him at plus 185. I like him. He is my Link Memorial Dog of the Week. We're going Francisco Prado to upset the apple cart. I think he's going to announce himself at 170 pounds as a threat. And at just 22 years old, I think a highlight reel KO of Jake Matthews is really going to show everybody what this kid is made of for his future.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. This is probably my favorite underdog on the card as well. Like I've liked what I've seen from Prado. He's like a little tank. He likes to push forward. My only real concern in this one is that if Matthews does push the grappling a little bit and is able to take him down, I could see him just giving up rounds. And that's like the thing that scares me about this fight, because I worry about the size and I worry about just the grappling deficiency he's going to have against a guy like Matthews. And that's what makes me a little bit tentative on this one. But at the same time, I think he'll have a good advantage on the feet. And I think he's going to have a power advantage. And like you said with Matthews, he's got good wrestling, but he doesn't have great wrestling. And I think that's going to be what ends up perhaps catching up with him. Another thing to look at, though, is if Matthews does end up winning the first round, I think you can get a really good live line on Prado as well in the plus 300, plus 400 range. And I think that in the second and third round, he'll be just as dangerous as he was in the first. So I think that's another kind of way of looking at it. But personally, yeah, I like Prado a lot as an underdog here. I think that at 22 years old, he's going to be getting exponentially better each camp. And moving up to 170 pounds, I don't think is the worst thing for him. He's really kind of a stocky, like he'll be a little bit stocky at that weight class. Like how tall is he listed? He's listed at 5'10", and I think that's probably generous. So he's going to be a little bit. I
want to see them face off.
Yeah. He'll be like a little bit of a Kelvin Gastelum type welterweight. Like he'll be undersized, although like how Gastelum was at middleweight, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's going to be what makes this a little bit interesting. But also, when you are thicker at 170 pounds, you're more of a tree stump and harder to take down. So, that could end up playing to his advantage as well. So let's see how it goes. I like Prado as well. I like what you're saying. And if you look at Matthews' resume, I got the Rowe one wrong as well. And like you said, Rowe probably could have had that fight. But then you look at the other wins outside of that, aside from like a really early win over Li Jingliang before he became like the Leech and was really good, his resume doesn't really hold up much. It's a lot of kind of UFC washouts. So I like that Jake Matthews, and I respect him. I think he's a really skilled guy. But I think that Prado at age 22, he's going to come into his own at some point, and it could be in this fight. And if it's not now, he's 1-3, he risks getting cut. So there's a lot on the line for him in this fight.
There's a lot on the line. And you know what? I believe in this kid, and he's so young. Unless he gets completely broken, like let's say Jake Matthews knocks him out, like then we've got a problem. Then we've got stuff we need to talk about. But even if he has a grappling related loss to Jake Matthews, the UFC is not going to cut a very talented 22-year-old kid. They'll give him another shot. They'll let him lay off for 9 months and try again and give him a better spot. And I think he's going to have a future regardless of the outcome. I want to get in on the train now. He's kind of like a Peyton Talbot to me. Obviously, I don't know that he's got the ceiling that I think Peyton Talbot has, but it's a young kid that I want to buy in on, and I want to buy in on him early because I think some people will be late to the boat. And I do think he's going to show out this weekend. Jake Matthews is kind of a mid-level gatekeeper. We've got high-level gatekeepers and then, mid-level gatekeepers. I think he's a mid-level gatekeeper. Like you said, most of his wins are guys that just don't really hack it in the UFC. And his resume is not super strong. Anytime he takes a step up in competition, he always seems to fail that test. So this is looking the other direction. Can he play gatekeeper here for this young kid? I'm hoping the Prado ceiling is a lot higher than people are expecting, and I'm going to roll the dice on him. I think he's got a very good chance of winning this fight. And one final note. Yes, the takedowns has everybody concerned in this spot, but he's training at ATT. Like, where are you going to get better wrestling defense training than at ATT? He's in the right place. We know they've got their strength and conditioning program going over there. We know they've got their supplements chopped out over there. We know he's going to get wrestling work over there. Like, he's in the best place possible to evolve. And I think that's what we're going to see in this fight. And I do have to apologize to Aaron Harlock in the chat. You keep saying Aaron. I think you're talking directly to me. It's tripping me out. My bad, Aaron. This time I am talking directly to you. My bad. There's always somebody.
Refer him as Harlock for the rest of the podcast. We'll be fine.
That's right. If I say Harlock, I'm talking to you. You know the difference there. Otherwise, Aaron is the co-host over here this week. All right, guys. We have got another fight that Aaron, my walk of shame continues. Jim Crute taking on Rodolfo Bellato. Jimmy Crute coming out of very early retirement here. Let's just get it out of the way. One of the biggest L's, and I know I've had a lot of those lately, but one of the biggest L's I've taken in my life was backing Jimmy Crute. He was given Alonzo Menifield, and you guys know how I feel about Alonzo Menifield. He's big, and he's really muscly. He's done a really, really good job, but I frankly think Alonzo Menifield has massively overperformed what he should have been able to handle in the UFC. Their first fight goes to a draw, and I counted my lucky stars because I had so much money on Crute that night. I was like, oh my Lord, like he should have lost that fight, and somehow I got a draw out of it. Whoo! They booked the rematch. They let these guys rest and recover. It's enough time off that I'm like, you know what? I think, Crute's chin is going to be good. He'll be all right here. And frankly, you switch the game up a little bit and Alonzo's in trouble. Like now you know what you need to do. Now you know what you can have some success with, right? I expected Jim Crute to come out and just destroy Alonzo Menifield. Instead, he folds up shop at the first sign of adversity and retires. That it's like, that's another one where it's like the skill set is all there. The UFC is not pushing damn near 40-year-old Alonzo Menifield. They wanted Crute to get back on track there. They gave you a second shot at a guy that you should have beat, and you let it slip, man. And I got caught with my hand in the cookie jar. So now Jimmy Crute retires. 2 years later, he says, I got too much left. I owe it to myself to give it another run. But, man, on a 0-3-1 run before he hung it up, he's coming back. And the UFC was going to give him Marcin Prachnio. If you ever needed a sign that they were giving him as much of a layup as possible, they were putting him against Marcin Prachnio for his comeback fight. But Prachnio pulls out. That man has absolutely no grappling. Jim Crute would have submitted him in the very first round. It would have been the easiest fight of his life. Bellato is still a bit of an unknown quantity at this point, though. 12-2. 28 years old, coming off Dana White's Contender Series. He makes his UFC debut against Ihor Potieria, and he won via ground and pound in round 2. Now, if you don't do anything except for check these guys' records, that result is not going to surprise you. Big, beefy Brazilian coming in here, training out of Teixeira's gym, and beating a guy like Ihor in the second round via TKO. Story checks out, right? But, Aaron, you go back and watch that fight. Ihor was lighting this dude up. I mean, he could not miss. Ihor looked like Anderson Silva out there. He was landing anything he wanted, cracked this dude on the jaw, sprawls him out in round 2. I mean, Bellato is helpless on his back. He's doing the thing where when a hammer fist hits, your head is like rebounding off the UFC canvas, and he's looking directly at the ref. You can tell just 1 or 2 more shots, and it's over. The ref is ready to step in. Bellato was gone. And Ihor gasses. He completely runs out of steam, and he sets up shop on top of him. He's breathing heavy. He's collecting himself, and they're all like, oh, if he could just go, if he could just land a couple more punches, they're going to stop it. He doesn't have anything left. Bellato reverses him, gets on top of him, catches a second win, and pounds Ihor out. So just clinching victory from the jaws of defeat. It's an awful look being in that kind of a position against Ihor Potieria. Bellato looks like he's got some decent skills, but he's so slow, Aaron. That's the big thing for me. He is slow. The speed made the difference in that fight, in my opinion. You got to give him credit for his unwillingness to die. He's got power. He obviously can grapple. So Bellato's a kid that I kind of feel like jury is out on still. He's at a very good gym training with very high-level partners. Maybe he's got some upside here. Jim Crute is a guy that he's a round one or bust finisher for the most part when you look back through his career. He's got big, nasty power. He's an insanely good grappler. That's always been his calling card. He's very, very slick on the ground. And he's also a power grappler, guys. I've talked to you about this before where he's got 2 Kimura wins in the UFC. Now, submitting Michael Oleksiejczuk, everybody does that. That's not overly surprising. But this guy Kimura'd Paul Craig. Nobody is submitting Paul Craig, Aaron. Like, if you're beating Paul Craig, it's via a very greasy play-it-safe decision or you're knocking him out. Nobody is submitting Paul Craig. Jim Crute went in there and tore his arm off. This guy is very, very physically strong. And the Kimura, for the most part, if you know your jiu-jitsu, it's a leverage thing. But generally speaking, you've got to have a strength advantage over your opponent because people's arms are very, very strong. They're hard to bend that way. You don't get them very often. The fact that this guy has 2 at the UFC level should show you just how physically powerful he really is. This should be a really fun fight. I kind of feel like Jimmy is going to come back and remind everybody and at least get one for the Gipper. But, man, it's impossible to trust him with my money at this point. Bellato is a minus 165 favorite. You can get plus 140 on Jimmy the Brute Crute. And I think I have to pick Jim Crute to come back and get one more win, Aaron. He's been training. I think he went out to Bangtao Muay Thai for this fight. So he's been working on his striking. I would expect some improvements. But again, that quit job that he did on me, I just don't know if I can go back to the well again. So I'm picking Jim. I don't think I can get there with my money.
Yeah, I've got to plug my nose and take Jimmy Crute too. I like he's just better everywhere. He's better in every area. He's never lost in Australia or New Zealand. So I mean, at least in this region, he's been trustworthy. And if you look at the losses, I mean, yeah, Menifield's not like necessarily the best light heavyweight. I'll give you that. But Jamal Hill, fought for a championship, was a champion. Anthony Smith fought for a championship, and that was like an injury. If you remember, he had a dead leg. His leg went dead on him. He couldn't start the second round. He went to come and start the second round. The ref waved it off.
This is the craziest TKO ever.
Yeah. But I think that when you look at this fight, like he's just better everywhere. And you can get Crute by sub at plus 1,000. Like that's an auto bet against any light heavyweight because the light heavyweight division's grappling sucks for the most part. You got to take Crute by sub at plus 1,000, don't you? Come on. I'm plugging my nose. Jimmy Crute. And you got to take Jimmy Crute by sub at plus 1,000. If he loses, he loses. You go down with the ship, whatever. But this is a fight that if Jimmy Crute still has a little bit of Jimmy Crute left in him, he's fighting on home soil. He's never lost on home soil. Like maybe I'm talking myself into this here because I see the plus sign, and you always whenever you see the plus sign, you gotta convince yourself that you're making a good choice here. This is not a good choice, but it's a choice that I think we have to make because he's just better everywhere than this guy. And I'm not impressed by Bellato at all. I think that this is the fight for Jimmy Crute to kind of bounce back. So give me Jimmy Crute. And if I'm wrong and I go down with the ship, I go down with the ship. But he's one of the underdogs that I like on this card.
Aaron, I actually, believe it or not, you've got to take Jimmy Crute by sub. The problem is I actually would rather take him by KO. Just the way Ihor was chopping this dude up, I really feel like the knockout is going to come cleaner. And I feel like with him training out at Bangtao Muay Thai, like we're going to see his knees and his elbows a whole lot cleaner than he was before. And the speed, that's really the big thing. You go back and you watch some of his early fights, and man, Jim Crute gets to the button quick. I will never forget the Modestus Pakauskas knockout. Like that counter came so fast. I think the reason I want to back Jim Crute is not because I want to bet on Jim Crute. It's because I want to fade Bellato. And like I said, a lot of people are going to look at that resume and just go, oh, yeah, Dana White's Contender Series, 1-0 in the UFC. Sure. and then they're going to want to put their money on him. And like you said, I think the line is backwards. I think Jim Crute should be the favorite here. So you're kind of talking me into it. I probably need to plug my nose and bet Jim Crute, but I would personally lean KO for my prediction. I might do the inside the distance just because both are so very much on the table. Inside the distance is probably going to be in the ballpark of plus 500, and that'll cover both of you, both finish opportunities on that side of things. That might be the move.
Yeah, I think that's a solid move. That makes sense to me.
Only because it's so possible for either one. You know what I mean? I feel like if it was plus 1,000 for the sub, and then it was like plus 200 for the KO, now we're talking. Like there's a serious gap there. There's some real value on that sub line. But if they're hanging plus 600 on the KO, like, yeah, I'll probably just go inside the distance instead, make sure both opportunities are covered. And honestly, Jay has got the point here. Straight bets are better than these plus 1,000 types. Well, Jay, we're talking about sprinkling. I'm saying like do a full unit on Jim Crute money line if you're going to do that, and then do a quarter unit or a half unit on the inside the distance, that kind of thing. Not go big on the super long shot, obviously. Just kind of a sprinkle.
One thing I've historically been very good at is dart throwing. Like my dart throw on the Sportsnet website last week was Rosenstruik versus Pavlovich goes the distance at plus 500. And
oh my goodness, what a call.
We hit that dart. So if there's one thing that I've been historically very good at, it's noticing these little trends with lines that seem a little bit off and throwing darts at them. And I'll stand by that if you want to go and look at my history.
Oh no, I've seen the cards you put up, man. I'm very, very much impressed by those. And I will say I'm disappointed in myself last week because I argued for the over 1.5 on that fight. I wasn't going to be ballsy enough. I talked for like a half heartbeat about the Pavlovich by decision. I couldn't quite get there, but I could have very, very easily gotten to the over 1.5. That's the one that I really, really should have gotten. So unfortunate, but yeah. All right. And let's see here. Just to set the record straight, by the way, Matt, I did see your comment here. I'm like 99% certain that I bet Jamal Hill over Jimmy Crute because I've been a Jamal Hill guy more than I've been a Crute guy for my entire life. It was like 5 years ago at this point. I know it's still hilarious how much money I lost on Jamal Hill lifetime, but I did bet Hill over Crute, not the other way around. So just to set the record straight on that one. All right, guys, let's move it along. We've got about 3 more fights to get to. Do me a favor, please, and smash the like button if you have not already. Make sure you're subscribed here on the channel as well. Next up, we've got Tallison Teixeira, who, ironically enough, is not training out of Teixeira's gym, taking on Justin Tafa in a big man fight. This is one, Aaron, that I want to keep short and sweet because there's just not a lot to talk about. Justin Tafa, 7'4", 31 years old, he is very, very much a guy that just wants to get in there and swing, right? He just wants to get in there, chuck leg kicks, throw overhands, punch until somebody falls over. He got taken down 7 times and completely washed out on the ground by Carl Williams. They cut the guy that beat him. Like they want this all action type of step forward and swing, bite down on the mouthpiece. That's what he's here for. That's all he's going to do. Tallison Teixeira, 7-0, 25 years old. The UFC is really desperate for heavyweight fighters. And this kid looks like he might be a pretty solid prospect, especially at his age. He fights like a middleweight, man. He's so tall. He's very fast. He's very long. He strikes in combinations. He's got good head movement. I like this kid. He's going to have a 9-inch reach advantage here over Tafa. The only problem for me, though, is he doesn't seem to have that death touch that you kind of need when you're fighting Tafa. And I feel like if he rolls out of the wrong punch one time, Tafa's just going to be there waiting for him with a giant meaty hook. I kind of think Tafa gets the win here because this kid isn't quite polished enough to be a heavyweight banger in the UFC. Violence is probably the answer, as always, but I don't know if I'm ready to lay chalk on this kid when he's so new and he's not used to this level of competition yet, even though you can't fully ever trust Tafa.
Wait as the week goes on. This line's going to climb because people are going to see this guy's undefeated. They're going to see he's a big guy. They're going to look at him on Contender Series where he beat a plus 650 underdog Can, and they're going to think that this guy is good. Give me Tafa over tall guy defense any day. He's going to get that chin, and he's going to fold this guy. I know he's undefeated. I know that, he's got a track record. He's beating absolute nobodies. I hate to say it. Like, I hate to disrespect this guy. I'm sorry, but give me. I was praying that he was going to fight Lucas Brzeski on December 7th that fight fell through because Teixeira got injured. Brzeski was gonna be like plus 500 KO in that fight, and I was gonna like slam that one because Brzeski I think has underrated power. But now you're giving me Tafa, and this is a guy that likes to strike and doesn't have any grappling, and he's got tall guy defense. Like, give me Tafa all day as an underdog. Like, to me, it's a no-brainer. But I could be proven wrong. It's heavyweights. This guy could land a nice right hook, drop Tafa. Who knows? But Tafa, like, how many guys have actually knocked Tafa out? Like, Tafa got out-wrestled by Carl Williams. He lost the decision to Vandera, who I imagine wrestled him. I don't remember that fight at all. He lost a split decision to Thick Diaz. Carlos Felipe was walking him down. And I remember he got caught by Jorgen De Castro. That was the one he got knocked out. I could have sworn I remembered him getting knocked out. He got knocked out by Jorgen.
That was the only one.
He was coming in quick, and he got nailed with a counter. And that's it. This guy's not going to put Tafa out. Give me Tafa by KO. I'm sure it'll be plus 170 or something for the KO prop.
I don't mind it.
That I'm going to look at. Yeah, I mean,
I don't mind it one bit.
I don't think is there a KO prop on this yet? Let me just take a quick look. I don't think there is. Not that I can see. But when that comes out, like, I'm going to take a look at that for sure.
I like it. I'm kind of leaning with you here on the Tafa side of things too. I think this kid is a bright future, but with heavyweights, they just take so long to season, and it seems like, you know, the toughness, the grit, the power, all that stuff kind of comes with you with your man muscles. You got to develop a little bit further. So these light, skinny, fast heavyweights, they just don't quite got it at this level yet. I think this kid is going to be pretty good, but I don't know if he wins this fight here against Tafa in his own backyard, especially if he's not going with a wrestling heavy game plan. The other thing I did notice, Aaron, is that Teixeira sometimes closes the space with his opponents by accident. Like, he's so into his offense that he gets closer than he intends to. Yeah, and then they end up kind of stepping on each other's stepping on each other's shoes. You don't want to do that against Tafa. No, like, if you're closing the distance and stepping in close to Tafa, he's going to crack you. And I think if he makes that mistake, he's just a little too unpolished for me at this point. I'm with you. I think Tafa's going to land something. All right, guys. Co-main event. Y'all are waiting for it. Everyone wants to talk about it. We've got Zhang Weili taking on Tatiana Suarez. Now, really quickly, let's go ahead and get it out of the way, you guys. Tatiana Suarez opened up as a decent-sized underdog coming into this one. It is worth noting that she has flipped to becoming the bona fide favorite in this spot. She was plus 140 2 weeks ago. Currently, she sits minus 125 in some places. So I've always talked about, if a line gets close to zero and they do not let it flip, usually you can tell the bookies like a certain side in that circumstance. When the line, especially in a situation like this where it's a title fight, one of the biggest spotlight spots we have on this entire card, when it's a title fight, they allow that line to flip, where now the underdog is the seeding favorite and they continue to move it their direction. That speaks volumes to what the bookmakers, at least, make of this fight. And I've got a special treat here for you guys. Aaron, if you don't mind, you can kick your feet up for just a second. The single best, and not kidding you guys, the single best sports bettor I've ever met in my life, a man who quite literally pays for his daughter's college betting, the sharpest guy I know, Keg, was supposed to be with me in some capacity on this show. We were going to do a little something for this one, and we couldn't quite put that together for us, but he went ahead and sent me a little video. So let's go ahead and let you guys hear from my guy, Keg.
All right, what's going on, boys? It's Keg from Nuke the House, and it looks like it's about 4:30 in the morning. And my guy Clint asked me to film a video for you guys for Tatiana Suarez against Weili Zhang. So first of all, can we show a little appreciation for my guy Clint? I mean, the guy is about as transparent as it gets.
I didn't listen to this
gross industry that I make my living in. And while some people might complain about wins and losses, there are three things that are undeniable when it comes to our dear friend Clint. Number one, he tells everybody he's not a full-time bettor, and everything that he bets is for recreational purposes, so he's ultimately transparent. Number two, he bets everything that he says he will bet with real American dollars. And I know that sounds crazy, right? But it's a lot more than 90% of this joke of an industry can actually say to people. And 3, he's as transparent as anybody in this disgusting industry, which is also a lot more than 90% of the people in this industry can say. So I love you, Clint. You're the nicest person doing this, and we should have a lot more people in the space like you. That's
unplanned, Ethan. Unplanned. I'm sorry.
I own a company called Nuke the House. If anybody would like to try us out for a week, the promo code is Nuke the Playoffs right now for a 1 week.
I was going to shout you out. What are you doing?
Free trial to nukethehouse.com or sorry, don't. Aaron. I'm fine either way. Yeah. All right. So to the fight. I know everything there is to know about Tatiana Suarez. She first hit my radar in 2015 when my cousin watched her in the Gladiator Challenge in San Jacinto, California, back, I want to say late 2014 or maybe 2015. He called me and he was like, I found a girl and she's a problem. So immediately she was on my radar. Then I start to dig in to her and I find out like what she really is. I see that she won the National High School Wrestling Championship in 2006-ish, maybe 07. I saw that she won the Pan American Games in 08. So I fully recognize that this girl was a real problem way before she was selected for the 23rd season of The Ultimate Fighter almost 8 years later. Now, if I could have bet on her to win The Ultimate Fighter 9 years ago, I would have put my entire family's net worth on her to win because there was a 0% chance that she was going to lose that tournament. Unfortunately, fast forward 9 years later, it's not much different in 2025. We really couldn't get down on the winner of The Ultimate Fighter right now in the legal market if we wanted to. So not a lot has changed. But regardless, I knew that she was one of the best female wrestlers in the history of this country. And I knew that she was bar none the best female wrestler on the planet by a country mile back in 2016 when she won the show. So naturally, I couldn't wait to bet this girl to win a championship. Didn't come, right? Okay. Fast forward a few years. The pandemic comes, right? Suarez out on takedown entry. She is drawing dead in this fight, in my opinion, okay? My issue with that is this is not men's MMA. This is not how it works in women's MMA. You just don't hit the kill switch and dead somebody like it's Powhatan and send somebody's brainstem into the third row, right? That's not how the women do it, no matter how good they are, right? Even for somebody like Weili, and make no mistake, Weili has a monumental striking advantage in this fight. It is undeniable, and she does. The problem is, I don't think it's going to matter when her shoulders are basically pinned to the mat.
My guy Keg is the single sharpest gambler I've ever met in my entire life. And he has had Tatiana Suarez circled in this spot, as you can tell, for years and years and years. He has far more money than I'm willing to gamble on this spot. And that may account for some of the line move that we've seen, Aaron. I was late to the party. I should have jumped in on this far, far sooner. Unfortunately, I got minus 105. I am in on the Tatiana Suarez side of things. I simply believe that her grappling is going to be too much to handle. Zhang Weili has done a very, very good job of using her grappling in her fights for the most part, and she's actually landed 6 takedowns in her last 2 fights in back-to-back spots. But Mrs. Patchy Mix, Tatiana Suarez, is another level. You know, this is a woman who is one of the best wrestlers, if not the best wrestler we've ever seen in the UFC. She averages 6.2 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 61% accuracy, which is crazy. Because usually when you get these Marab-style spam takedown artists, that takedown percentage is far lower. It's like 30-40% on their takedowns. But she still hits 60% of her takedowns, shooting 6 of them per fight. And she's got one of the tightest squeezes we've ever seen, working out with Patchy Mix on the daily. Her jiu-jitsu is improving. She's got back-to-back guillotine chokes. I think she's going to bully Zhang Weili physically, be able to keep up with the scrambles. And like my guy Keg was saying, I know Zhang Weili has a very, very big striking advantage in this spot. I don't think this fight is going to take place on the feet. I think we're getting a new champion on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm with you and Keg. You know, when I watched The Ultimate Fighter with Tatiana, I was like, she's going to be a champion one day. It's just a matter of time. And if you were to ask me, like, who are the top 3 wrestlers in, like, the history of the women's strawweight division, it's like Tatiana's a clear number 1, obviously. Number 2 is like probably Carla Esparza, and Tatiana like dog walked Carla Esparza. Like that fight was not even close for a second of that fight. Like, and Carla went on to win the championship after that fight. Like the big problem with Tatiana is the injuries, and you don't know how many miles are on the engine at this point in time. Like how fragile is this? Is she being held together with popsicle sticks going into this fight because this is the opportunity? Like this is she deserves the title fight. She should get the title fight. That's the part that really scares me, because if you look at the amount of cage time that Zhang Weili has had compared to Tatiana over the last 5 years or whatever it is, like it's night and day. That being said, I just think that she's so far ahead of everybody, and it's not a Zhang Weili thing. It's just she's so far ahead of everybody in that division when it comes to wrestling that, like, you know, I just don't like if there's grappling involved in this fight, she's gonna get the better of Zhang Weili wherever, like in all of these exchanges. Now, like the way for Zhang Weili to win this fight is like, again, you utilize your striking tools in a way to try to negate those takedowns and do your best to scramble out. But like at the same time, you know, Tatiana is just so far ahead of everybody when it comes to grappling. And I've got to go with Tatiana. I was shocked that she was an underdog. Somebody told me over the weekend, like, oh, I got her at plus 130. I was like, sorry, I thought she was going to be like minus 220 in this spot. I should have looked ahead. I like you, I didn't look ahead. And like when this opened, she opened at plus 178. And that line moved very quickly. But it only moved to about the plus 150 range, plus 145. Like that's still a great number for Tatiana Suarez. So you're taking a bit of a leap of faith in the unknown, which is like, you know, what is her what's the word I'm looking for? Her durability. Like what's her durability like at this stage in her career? That's like the kind of leap of faith you're taking, is like that she's going to be able to maintain her durability and not get caught with something. But at the same time, like if this is a grappling heavy fight, she's going to win. Like she's just going to win. So I like, and grappling, when you look at like the Khabibs of the world and the people that have that elite level grappling, like there's just so little you can do to stop it. And especially in women's MMA, where we don't have any grapplers as good as she is. Like Kayla Harrison's like an Olympic judo gold medalist, and I think that Tatiana's a better like MMA grappler than she is, because she was a freestyle wrestler. Like I think freestyle is a much more valuable tool in terms of MMA versus judo. I just think Tatiana has the potential to cruise on Saturday, and I've got to go with Tatiana.
All right, I'm glad we line up on that one as well. Aaron, my guy Keg, on the same side with us.
Although let me just say something about Keg. If he wanted to bet her to win the Ultimate Fighter, she was minus 350 against Amanda Bobby Cooper. I mean, that's about as close to a lock as it gets in MMA at that kind of a price. If he knew that much about her at the time, maybe he did. But
I can guarantee you he had her parlayed up somewhere.
Okay, good.
I'm sure he had a piece of it somewhere. I think he was saying like futures style, like at the beginning of the show, if you could say she was going to win it at the end type of situation, almost like a futures champion type of situation.
Yeah, but like, hey, if you're that confident, bet $360,000 to win $100,000. You know,
yeah,
I don't know. Just saying.
Yeah, no, it's definitely out there. It's a possibility for sure. All right, guys, that's the co-main event. We are both agreeing on the and new from the co-main event. Let's go to the main event here. Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2, the rematch. You guys know I've been a Dricus du Plessis believer since he made it to the UFC. This has been my freaking guy. I got on the train early. He's been plus money, much like Merab was a lot of the way up this run. People just continuing not to believe in him, and he always finds a way to hit that next gear. He always finds that second breath and pulls himself up and gets going here in the fight. Loved the Robert Whittaker spot, made piles on that. Loved the Sean Strickland spot at even money, made piles on that. Loved the Israel Adesanya fight, called the finish on that one. We've been printing with Dricus du Plessis recently, and now we're getting the rematch here with Sean Strickland. And frankly, I just think Dricus is getting better every single time we see him. He is so much smarter than people give him credit for. You listen to his interviews and stuff like that. I know he's goofy, but you can tell he has a mind for MMA. You can tell his coaches have him mentally prepped and ready to go the right way every single time he steps into the cage. He has seemed to fix his cardio problems. If you can go 25 minutes with Sean Strickland, even just once, I don't ever want to hear about cardio ever again. Like, they game planned perfectly for that fight, for him to have a full 25 minutes and keep up with the biggest cardio machine in the division. He hits like an absolute truck. He can grapple. I know he's loopy and it looks weird, but it's effective, man. He just physically breaks people over the course of his fights and wears them down. Now that he's been in there with Sean for one fight, I think he's going to have learned his lesson, be able to make some adjustments, and come back and be even more impressive in this one. I expect Dricus is going to win this fight again. And in fact, I think he's going to be more impressive doing it. I think he's going to finish Sean Strickland this time around, you guys. We're going to end up getting like a Dricus versus Hamzat or something along those lines coming down the pipe here. I love me some Dricus du Plessis. We've talked about this before, Aaron. I should have gotten on the ball a little bit sooner. This line dropped closer to pick 'em, and now all the money has come in on Dricus, all the respected money. You've got a big plus tag on Sean Strickland. I am tempting fate. Aaron, I'm tempting fate by doing this again. I told everybody the line was wrong on Umar Nurmagomedov a couple weeks ago. I said, you guys, this should not be a minus 200 line. This should not be a minus 250 line. Merab getting plus 250 is something that you just auto-click. You must bet that number. But I believe so much in Umar that I'm willing to parlay him and put him in a favorite chalky parlay just to get his hand raised, just to get the win. And frankly, Aaron, he should have won that fight if they didn't have him grappling in round 3, trying to take Merab down. If he just kickboxes like he was in round 1 and 2, I think he gets the first 3 rounds and wins that fight. So we were this close. But regardless, the line is wrong. That's what I think here. I think Dricus should be a minus 155. I think Dricus should be a minus 150. The further out this line gets, the more value there is on Sean Strickland. Now, not every fight is going to go like the last time you saw it. Like I said, I actually think we'll see a finish this time around and not a 25-minute back and forth. So I do think Dricus will cover this line a little bit more in this fight than he did the first time. But plus 170, if this thing gets up anywhere near plus 200, Sean Strickland is the guy that will just cover that number. He will always be in the fight. He will always make it close. He will always make it competitive. So I don't blame anybody for taking the shot on the underdog with Sean Strickland. What I've done is closed out my parlay with Dricus du Plessis. Again, wrong number. Don't do that. But Aaron, it's like girl math. This is gambler math, right? I'm taking a favorite from earlier on in the card, and I'm going to pretend like they don't exist. As long as they win their fight, I've got plus 103 on Dricus. I am pretending that I have plus 103 on Dricus. It's like it's on sale, right? You get this guy at a discount because of my parlay. That's how this works, right? I'm going to convince myself that that's the truth, even though that's completely wrong gambling theory. Don't do that. That's what I'm doing. Aaron, what do you make of this fight? And are we seeing back-to-back and news, or are we going to go 1-1 with these champions here this weekend?
Yeah, like we're as close to aligned on this as it could be. Like I had Dricus by KO over Whittaker, and people were like, "Are you crazy? Whittaker's going to mop the floor with him." It was like plus 500 or something. I was like, Dricus hits like a truck. Like, if you can get Dricus by KO at plus 500 against anybody, you take it. So I took that. I also had Dricus by sub against Izzy, like you did. I had Dricus against Strickland. I also got Dricus against Strickland. I think after the first round was like plus 200. Then after the second round was like plus 300 or 400. That's crazy. What I would recommend to people for this one is watch the first round. Dricus is something of a slow starter. Strickland is still is a puzzle to figure out. I think the line will be a lot tighter after the first round. That's what I would do if you like Dricus. The Dricus inside the distance line is interesting to me, but it's still like you said, there's not a lot of value on Dricus in a lot of these lines. Dricus inside the distance plus 185, and I mean, Strickland's fights often go to decision, so I don't even love the value there. I think at minus 200, again, Strickland is just such a good point fighter that, like, if it goes the distance, you can get Strickland by decision at plus 250. Like, I think there's really good value there, honestly. Like, I think that this is going to be a close fight if it goes, especially if it goes the distance. I think it could be one of those fights that goes either way. So it's one of those, like, proceed with caution, but I like Dricus to win. I can't get off the Dricus train right now. I think that Dricus, having been in there with Strickland for 25 minutes already, you know what you're going to get from Strickland. He's felt that rhythm, whereas Dricus is just a complete wild card. Like, you just never know what you're going to get with Dricus. You got the predictable versus the unpredictable. But again, Sean Strickland is so good at what he does that he's always live in these kind of spots. So, I have to lean Dricus, but like you, I think that the line is just a little bit inflated right now, and I kind of want to wait to pick the right spot if I'm going to take Dricus at some point.
Yeah, it's always terrifying when these lines get blown up this way, especially when it opened up pick'em. But you got to pray, you got to believe that this is sharp money that's pushing this line. It's respected money from the books that's pushing this line. We'll see. I hope you and I are on the right side. We do agree here, and new for the co-main event, and still for the main event. Aaron, my friend, thank you so much for spending your time with us here on the podcast. Thank you for breaking down these fights with us and joining us just to kind of have some fun, kick back, relax, and talk about our favorite sport. I know you've got a lot going on. If you'd like to share with the people where they can find you and some more of your content, please, by all means, the floor is yours, my guy.
Sure. I've made it easy on everybody. You go to www.aaron.report and you can find all of my social media handles there, all of my work and everything else all in one spot. So www.aaron.report. Go there and you'll find me.
You love to see it. Make sure you guys look out, especially if you're on social media. Aaron does little tidbits with these fighters on Fight Week and stuff like that, where he'll upload his interviews and stuff. He's a good follow on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Nobody calls it X. What am I saying? Thank you guys so much for being here. It is pay-per-view Fight Week, so as always, we will do the total takedown. We will do the undefeated post-weigh-in show. Of course, we'll be getting the sharp action report with my guy Andrew from Superbook Sports a little bit later on in the week. Thank you all for being in the chat. You guys that are always with me and hanging around, even the haters. I appreciate you guys being here. One more time, guys, do me a favor. Click the link for Bet Openly. Please sign up. We get 100. I'm waxing the chest. It's not going to be fun. You guys will get to have a laugh out of it, but do me a favor and go ahead and hit that button if you haven't already. We'll see you guys a little bit later in the week. Be good. Much love. Let's roll.